Welcome everyone to our introductory class on Adobe Captivate, the premier e-learning software to help you create engaging e-learning modules. So what are we going to learn in this class? We're going to start with the basics. We're going to give you an overview of the program, meaning what can it do and where to find things, how to customize all of your modules. And then we're going to get right into it where we can actually create new e-learning modules from scratch, also learning some of the amazing templates and how to customize those. And we quickly get into how to work with responsive e-learning design, meaning you're going to want to make modules available on mobile devices as well as desktop. And we're going to make it interactive by creating buttons, making hyperlinks, bringing in images, as well as making your images more engaging while being able to enhance them with all kinds of great Adobe features built into the program. We also get under the hood with working with master slides and design, so you can really make some custom slideshows and e-learning modules. And of course, we're going to learn how to publish all of your projects as well. So how does that process look from beginning to end? Come and find out. And remember, we have a number of different files for you to work with. So you're going to see that I'm going to be pausing every once in a while saying, hey, please go ahead and practice using some of the files that we provided for you. All right, so have fun and good luck. Before we begin our adventures working on Captivate, let's get some groundwork out of the way. Let's talk about how to prepare for our e-learning modules. This is going to be very important because preparation equals perfection. So let's go ahead and talk about what kind of questions we can ask ourselves in order to help prepare for the journey ahead. So what are some things to ask? This is pretty much how we're going to lead this part of the discussion. First thing you're going to want to ask is, who is my audience? Who are my learners? Are they going to be new beginners? Are they going to be a particular age group? Are they going to be subject matter experts? Why is this important? This is going to be important because you want to know, well, what kind of languaging can we use? Can we use jargon? Do we have to kind of break things down in a different way? Right? Are we going to be working with an older community? We're going to be working with a younger community. It all depends on who your audience is, and that's going to determine how you share your message. What kind of graphics might you use, right? What kind of additional types of tools might you use for accessibility, right? So all these different things are then going to determine what types of processes and what types of strategies you take on. So really you want to analyze your audience, what their special needs are in particular, and how to communicate to them more effectively. Next question is, what are my objectives? What are my learning objectives? You're going to be asking yourself, what are my goals for this training? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want my learners to learn all throughout? Now, this is going to be potentially multifaceted, meaning I have many objectives. I have many objectives that need to be met all throughout. Some of these objectives are going to be manifold. Some objectives are going to be building off of the previous objective. Now, we want to ask ourselves, what is my North Star? Meaning, all throughout, I know I'm going to be teaching about safety in the workplace, for example. Okay, well, what does that break down as terms of safety in the workplace, right? Is it safety using particular types of tools? Is it safety in terms of policy, in terms of safety reporting? Really break it down to its kind of like smallest core on a granular level, and then that's what your objectives are going to be. So you want to make sure that you have all these things documented, so therefore you can stay within that North Star, within those North Stars, to make sure that you don't kind of veer off course. And when you get more familiar with Captivate, it might be a little bit tempting to say, oh, I want to try out this tool, I want to try out that tool, because there's a lot of kind of shiny objects, but it might kind of veer you off course where you just want to kind of show something, go a little crazy. Just make sure that you stay on course and maintain that direction towards that North Star of what your objectives are. How will you assess student performance? Meaning, how will you quiz them? How will you do knowledge checks? When will you do knowledge checks? When is it going to feel appropriate to do that? And will you be tracking these knowledge checks? Will you be using quizzes and then ultimately reporting it through a learning management system? What is going to be your learning management system? So you want to ask all these questions all throughout. What types of quizzes might you do? Are you going to do basic multiple choice, basic true and false? Or maybe you're going to be doing something like drag and drop, make it a little more interactive. Maybe you're going to use some of these additional tools built into Captivate to make it a little bit more engaging, a little bit more captivating, a little bit more interactive. So you really want to ask all these questions and really ultimately coming back to your objectives, coming back to your audience. What's the best way to assess them? What's the best way to assess these objectives? Okay, so you really want to think about all these things and how they all combine. Ultimately, this is going to be an incredibly important part of when you're building out your script. Who are your subject matter experts? Because maybe you are just the person who is just putting all this together into Captivate, but you're not the one who actually is the subject matter expert. You might not know all there is to know about cybersecurity. You might not know all the things there need to know about HR policy, about safety in the workplace, right? About bringing in new hires. So you're going to lean on the HR manager. You're going to lean on the director of technology to help you gather as much information as possible for when you write the script. But it's quite possible that they're going to write the script. So let's talk about the next part. Who will actually write the script? Who will actually create a storyboard? So let's talk a little bit about that. Your script is going to be essentially the foundation for what your presentation is going to be. And your script could be as easy as just a bunch of bullets, right? But some people might go a little bit deeper, where maybe you're going to put it together in a spreadsheet and you're going to talk about, well, this is what I need to communicate. These are my objectives. But then you're going to get deeper, since this is e-learning, with the visuals, right? With audio, with voiceover, okay? And then potentially with other interactive elements, with quizzing. Okay, so that's going to be part of your storyboard. You really want to kind of generate some idea and strategy about how all these things are going to come together and when they will also show up on your timeline. So there are plenty of storyboard templates out there and plenty of script templates out there as well. And I highly encourage you to get some of those to at least see some examples of what you can do to really help you prepare when you finally execute, when you finally do your development process. We mentioned voiceover. So many of your modules are going to have voiceover on top of your modules. So you're going to have somebody coming in as the omniscient narrator. Maybe they're going to be the ones who are going to be reading what's on the screen, as well as being able to demonstrate what's on the screen. You'll have somebody actually reading what's on there, okay? Or maybe you're going to have kind of a narrator who's going to be taking the place of your teacher all throughout, and that person should be coming through as the voiceover. Who is going to be that voice talent? Is it going to be you? Are you going to be hiring somebody to do that? Maybe it's going to be a combination of both, where because you wrote the script, you may be doing what we call scratch audio, where you're going to be recording it, but then ultimately with the purpose and intention of having your voice talent, who's going to be somebody who does this professionally, they'll be recording it. So you want to ask yourself all these questions. And also, of course, what is your budget for this, right? And shopping around to see where you can do this. But some of you may be doing your text-to-speech using some of the robots, but we're going to talk about that in future lessons, where you can just, have your text all ready to go, and then the voiceover machine takes over and does it for you. So therefore, you don't have to work with voiceover. You can use technology to do that for you. Audio-visual needs. Again, you are working in an e-learning environment. So what people see on the screen is going to be so important. Your visuals are going to dictate your message sometimes. Of course, so is all of your text. But then you also want to think about interactive elements. You want to think about how we can engage people. You want to make it so, well, if somebody sees something on the screen, do we want them to click it? Okay, where do we want them to click, right? We also want to think about design elements. Maybe you're thinking about what is your design for your company? So we have to think about all that. What is your style guide for your organization to make sure that we're in line with all these things? Where are you going to get your images? Where are you going to get all of your sound, all of your audio? Maybe you're going to be working with a digital asset management company. Maybe you have something within your company. Maybe you're going to purchase these things from someplace else, some stock audio, some stock photo, some stock video. Where is all this coming from? And lastly in this conversation, and certainly not least, is the discussion about accessibility. You want to be 508 compliant or compliant with the Americans with Disability Act. You'll need to make sure that you think about all this accessibility options in terms of alt tags, making sure you're working with tabbing order, making sure that you have closed captioning. all these different things, right? So we're going to talk about that in future lessons, but you really want to take all this stuff into consideration before you even begin. Probably one of the most important aspects of all of your e-learning processes is how will you evaluate the quality of the course? Not evaluate the students, but evaluate how effective, how valid is your instruction. And not only about how valid, but how effective is it in terms of communicating what you want to say? Okay? How effective is the languaging that you're putting forth? Okay? Maybe certain words that make sense to you don't make sense to the majority of your students. We want to think about that. Okay? We want to think about how is the flow? How is it engaging? Okay? Is it boring to people? Right? We want to make sure that all throughout we are getting feedback. Okay? So that's going to be a big part of your process. And what many e-learning development specialists and professionals use is what's called the ADDIE model, right? ADDIE. And that's an acronym that stands for analyze. So basically what we're doing right now is we're analyzing our students. We're analyzing our objectives, all of the different content, all the different material, right? We're kind of breaking it all down. But then we go to the design part. And that for some of you might be the most fun part, where you're going to be, say, listen, let's put it all together. Let's get our visuals together. Let's talk about the interaction. Okay, let's talk about all the good stuff that makes the e-learning part become more engaging, more captivating for people. So that's going to be a big part of it. And then we develop it. Then you actually bring it into Captivate. Okay? You're actually making it all come together as one big cohesive unit. Now, these three things may be happening in unison, right? None of this is really, I would say, in a linear format. You're going to be kind of going back and forth between sometimes analyzing, going back, looking at your learning objectives, and then redesigning and then redeveloping. And then you finally get to the place where you are implementing it, right? You actually, you publish it, you produce it, okay? But many times before you publish it and produce it, where you're going to send it out to the masses, you want to make sure you are evaluating, okay? So this evaluation step is really threaded throughout your entire process, okay? This really should not be a linear process. This should be a cyclical process that is going around and around and around. And this evaluate is pretty much the thread that goes through every single step within this model. So I am very excited for you. This is going to be a great foundational bit of information for you to really get going. And I want you to take all of this that we have just talked about and really sprinkle all of this all throughout your entire process. No matter where you are, you want to be thinking about your objectives. Maintain that focus on your North Star. Thinking about all your audio and visual, right? Coming back to that, reevaluating it, thinking about, okay, is this my audience still? Like maybe you're going to learn more about your audience. You're going to come back to your subject matter experts. All throughout, you're going to learn more and more information. So this is an ongoing process. In a little bit, we're going to start working with Captivate. We're going to start our design and development component, and you're going to see this is going to be such a fun process for you if you're brand new or if you're a little more advanced. Regardless, Captivate has so much to offer. This is just the beginning of a whole series. So enjoy the ride, and we'll see you in the next lesson. And welcome back, everybody. In this first lesson, we are going to talk about the interface, the workspace, how we can get around Captivate. What are things called? How we can bring up some of our panels, how we can hide some of our panels. So let's just first talk about some things that you may be familiar with if you've worked with other programs such as PowerPoint. I find that many users are coming from PowerPoint and they come over here to Captivate and they see a lot of similarities, but there's also a few differences. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the similarities. First thing you're going to see here is on the left-hand side, which is known as the film strip. Now the film strip has all of your individual slides that are also editable. So if I were to click on this first slide, you'll see I can go ahead and go over here to my safety in the workplace and I can edit this text. Okay, so very similar how you may have seen this in PowerPoint or other slideshow types of programs. You'll also notice that I can select it and also change the order by very simply clicking and dragging on each individual slide. You'll also notice that right-clicking goes a very long way in this program. You right-click, you can see here's the option to hide your slides, copy, duplicate, delete, all that good stuff. You'll also notice that there's a lot of really helpful keyboard shortcuts that give you some nice little hints on. as well. So lots of similarities there. Now you'll also notice that if so, you might want to make this a little bit wider, okay, in case you have more slides to be able to show them just like that, kind of to be able to just kind of access and navigate all your different slides, maybe a little bit, faster, a little more fluidly. That's kind of more or less where the similarities kind of end, right? There's certainly some overlap, but for the most part, this is where you're going to see where PowerPoint and Captivate overlap, in terms of how we navigate. Now, you will also notice that on the top here, I have this little toolbar up on top. Now, this toolbar is going to take us to a number of different elements that we can execute a variety of different tasks. For example, notice here's one that says slides with a plus sign. Plus sign, what does that imply? I want to add something. What do I want to add? A whole bunch of different things, right? A blank slide, a question slide, a content slide. All these things we're going to get into, right? And potentially we're going to do it in slightly different ways. But for you, this might be the first place you go. We're also going to explore different themes. Themes essentially is going to be how we can change the look and feel of our slides, of our entire course, meaning it's going to change the background, it's going to change the color, it's going to change the font. We can very easily choose from a variety of different themes. We can get more themes. We can even customize our themes, which we're going to do in future lessons. We'll talk about also the fluid boxes. Okay, the implication of fluid boxes is that it is responsive. What does responsive means? It means it's going to respond accordingly, depending if you're on the desktop, if you're on a mobile device, if you're on an iPhone, or if you're on an Android, or if you're on a tablet. It's going to respond accordingly in terms of the size of the window and also how it actually adjusts all the content on the window. We're going to get in more detail on that as well. Here's your option for bringing in different types of text options. Here are some things you might have seen before in other programs, like inserting shapes. We're going to get into these as well. Okay, objects, you'll see that there's a number of these that are highlighted, and some of these are grayed out. This is very important to understand. Why are these grayed out? These are Flash based. Okay, we are no longer working with Flash, so these are basically artifacts of when Captivate first started. You were able to actually work with Flash-based components. No longer. Since this is going to be an HTML5 document, these will not work. So I highly encourage you to kind of ignore these, even if these are lit up, that we don't actually work with these, because they will not work, and your users and you will ultimately be very disappointed. Okay, and you'll probably kind of break the system a little bit. Okay, you'll also see under interactions some other options there. Now, a good chunk of where you're going to be going to is media, where you're going to be bringing in a variety of different things like images, audio, even video. Captivate comes with a whole host of characters you can work with, so we'll be exploring these as well. In future, more advanced lessons, we're going to get into interactive video, okay, if you want to record audio, saving, etc. That's going to be kind of the basics of what you need to know for right now in terms of how we can navigate. As far as certain other components, and I'm going to get back to these in just a moment, it's very important we understand the properties panel. And this is going to be a panel that you'll be working with probably more than anything. So how do we access the properties panel? If you look over here on the far upper right, you're going to notice here's the properties panel. For some of you, it may have been collapsed, so you don't actually see it. So you're just going to click on your little 3 lines. I like to call that the hamburger. I'm not the only one. Other people call it the same. So I'll be calling that the hamburger from now on. When you click on that, you're going to see here is your properties panel for you to explore all the different properties. So I'm going to get into a little more detail on the properties panel in upcoming lessons, but just understand that this is going, right now I'm looking at the properties of my entire slide. If I were to click on this particular text box, I'm now looking at the properties of that text box. For right now, it's just important for us to understand that the properties panel does exist and what it can do and how we can actually access all the information on the selected object or potentially on the slide itself by clicking in this little paste area here. Okay, we're going to go into more detail there. We also have the library panel, right? And this is going to show us all the different objects and elements that are available inside of our project, including our images, including some video, media, maybe some presentations if you're bringing in a PowerPoint, and audio, and the list goes on and on. So you can actually see all these. And again, we're going to do a lesson on those in just a bit. The other component that's going to be very important, when I say component, I really should probably say panel, okay? Because technically speaking, this is the properties panel. This is the film strip panel. This down here is known as the timeline panel. Okay, so you can see here is the timeline panel, and that is going to allow us to adjust the timing of things, right? The layering of things. Okay, so you can see I have 4 different layers happening here, and I have a little set of timestamps for all these things. I have layer names and everything. We're going to go into great detail on those, but for right now, we're orienting ourselves where things are, okay, and how we can access it. This one, if let's say I don't want this to show here, if I double click on this, it then gets minimized. If I come back here and I click on it once, it then gets expanded again. Okay, so double click to minimize, click once to then bring it back up again. All right, so sometimes you just don't need to see it and you want it to grow, meaning you want to have a little bit better of a kind of zoom level on your slide itself. You can go ahead and minimize that. One quick word about all your panels. Let's say one of my panels is just missing altogether. Don't know where it is. Let's say I want to add on a panel, right, that I know exists, but I don't see it anywhere. All your panels live in one particular area, and that is known as your window menu, just right there. So if you click on window, you're going to see a lot of options here. For example, there is film strip, right, what we talked about earlier. You can see is also my timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and make that disappear, and you'll see, uh-oh, where's my timeline panel? I can't even click on it anymore. If I go back up to window, no problem, I can very easily bring that back. So just keep that in mind. All right, there's a lot of panels here. As you get more and more advanced, you'll see that you'll be working with a lot more of these panels. So really helpful to understand that. And by the way, this also exists in other Adobe programs, so it might be something that you're used to. So just definitely keeping that in mind. Let's take a look at some of our other options way up on top here. Do you see this? This might look a little old school to some of us who are used to working with, the ribbons and stuff and some other programs, but these still actually fly when working with Captivate, right? So if I click on File, for example, you'll notice that there's an option for New Project, and I get a lot of options there. Okay, so blank project, responsive project, right? We just learned that word. Virtual reality, we're going to be talking about that in future videos, actually, not in this course, but in future videos. And then if you want to make a project from PowerPoint, etc., the list goes on. But just know that there's quite a bit kind of hiding inside of these. Okay, you can see here is record a new something. Okay, there's our publish options, importing options. So please don't ignore these. Okay, so what I'm just going to tell you is that as we go throughout this course, we're going to be coming up to here. And on your own, if you wanted to be exploring these just to see what's available, I highly encourage that. Okay, but unlike other programs nowadays, Captivate does use these a great deal. Now on this top same kind of latitude, you will see some pretty important options here. Like right now you see it says 1, and then there's a / and it says 31. Basically what this is telling me is what slide I'm currently on, and this tells me how many slides in total that I have. So if I want to go to slide 3, I just type out 3, and then bam, it takes me right there. I want to go back to slide 1. I have some other choices here, right? I'm going to go ahead and go to 1, and then bam, there I am. Okay, and I'm back on slide 1. Also notice that I can go from slide to slide using these little arrow keys as well. If I want to just kind of go down just like that and then go back up the same way. Totally up to you. And if you have the page down or page up key on your keyboard, you can use those just the same. Then over here to the right is this number here where it says 75. Okay, if you click on the drop down, you get a whole bunch of other numbers. It would be a little easier if it had some percentages there to understand, but basically this is my zoom level. So if I bring this down to 50, you can see how this changes the zoom level of what I'm seeing on the screen. I click on this. Now let's go over here to best fit, and you'll see, okay, it fits perfectly within my canvas here, right? Not too big, not too small. Let's go ahead and make it a little smaller. Let's go to 66. All right, and I like that. Very nice. Very good. So that's basically kind of the gist of what we'll be looking at as far as, our initial interface. Okay, just really kind of getting comfortable with how we can kind of navigate throughout Captivate. All right, so you can open up this file, open up some other files, and just explore, see what you can do, try and moving things around, right clicking, see what options come up. A lot of them are pretty self-explanatory. The ones that are not, we'll be exploring together in future lessons. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, practice up, and we're going to see you in the next lesson. Now, before we start cutting into things and making some edits and even creating our own, I think it's very important that we explore how we can preview our lessons, our courses, as we are working on them, because it's very important for us to see what the changes we're making look like. How do they look like on the web? How do they look like in our player? Okay, how are our animations working? All that good stuff, right? So we're not surprised by anything. All right, so in this top toolbar, you're going to see I have an option for preview. And you'll also notice that there's a nice little drop down there. And when I click on that little drop down, I have a lot of different options for previewing. Okay, I can preview the whole project, preview just this one slide I want to, from this slide, next 5 slides. Okay, so we're going to be exploring what these mean, right? And what this is, you're going to see here, this is the implication that this is in fact a responsive project. So you might want to see what it's going to look like on other devices. Okay, and I'll give you a little preview on that, but we're going to talk more about responsive design in future lessons. If I wanted to just play this slide, notice I can click on that, and you can see my little playhead down on the bottom moves. And you can see that there's a keyboard shortcut for that. If I say play slide, okay, it says F3. What you could also do is you can see if I just hit the space bar, see I'm down here, you can see on my keyboard, the space bar also does the same thing. So if I go to another one here, I'm going to go down to slide number 2, hit the space bar, and bam, there that is. Let's go over to here to slide number 3, hit the space bar. Okay, there's no animations here. There's nothing really changing, but we're going to change that, of course. But I just want you to see how that's one way you can preview it. One little caveat about that is that many times when you're previewing, Captivate needs the player or it needs a browser to generate the look and feel. Okay, so certain things may require that. So just keep that in mind in case it's not running the way you want it to in terms of, an animation or a JavaScript or a certain kind of HTML. If it's not working or not displaying properly, try to go to one of your other preview options, which is going to be just previewing it, the whole project potentially, okay, or live preview on devices, right? Or some of these other options that may come up for you. From this slide is a really good one. Let's just say, for example, I'm way down on the bottom and I really only want to preview 29, 30, and 31. Okay, like, oh, okay, well, you know what? That's really all I care about. So if I go to here, it's only going to preview just those 3, which is really nice because that way you don't have to start all the way from the beginning. If I did the entire project, I'd have to wait forever for it to render, and then it would take a long time for me to get finally to slide 29. So that's a really good one to know about. Next 5 slides, that's actually probably going to be the more common one that you do. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to slide number 1. Okay, so I'm going to go over to here, just type out 1, and I'm just going to say I just want to do the 5 slides. Now, keep in mind that there is a keyboard shortcut for this, F10. Okay, and I'm actually going to use the KISS keyboard shortcut quite a bit. I will announce it, but I think this is definitely one of the keyboard shortcuts to know about because you'll be using this all the time. Okay, so if I just do F10 right now, you can see it's generating it, right? It's rendering it, and then it's going to pop up, and you're going to see now it's running it, so I can actually see what it's going to look like, right? It opens up to my browser, and then you'll notice now what I'm seeing. I'm seeing what's known as my skin. So I can see what this looks like with my player, and all the colors I've chosen. Potentially, if you have a table of contents or if you have a menu, things like that, that will show here as well. We're going to learn how to do that in future lessons. But let's just go ahead and play this and be able to see, okay, very good. There it is. And you'll notice here I have a button, right? I can click on that and you can see that takes me to the next slide, okay? And then I can also, if I have no buttons on the slide itself, I can use these right here to go to the next slide. Excellent. Okay, very good. Okay, and then I'm at my 5th slide. Good. And then I am done. Okay. Now, keep in mind, as we start talking more and more about responsive, I don't want to ignore this, even though I will be talking more and more about it. Keeping out your eye on this because this will allow you to see what it's going to look like, right, when you change your different devices. Okay, so if I click and drag inside here, you can see how it reorganizes and readjusts itself, okay, depending on whether you're going to be doing desktop, a phone, or a tablet. Okay, so really important to identify this, okay, because for most of us, we are going to be wanting to generate responsive projects. So it's something I want to talk about kind of early on. All right, I'll go ahead and close that out, and it takes me right back here. All right, so again, that was F10 just to preview the next 5 slides. Okay, so you can see why preview is so important, okay? That you're going to want to do this pretty much all throughout. All right, so once again, just keeping in mind what your options are, using your keyboard shortcuts, right? Or possibly using some of these, totally up to you. Coming over to your timeline, hitting the space bar if you wanted to do it that way. Okay, and again, as we get into the timeline, you're going to learn about how we can interact with this as well. So again, pause the video, see how this works for you, take a look at some other Captivate projects, and we'll see you in the next lesson. As I said in a previous lesson, the Properties panel is going to be one of the most important and one of the most commonly used tools that you are going to be accessing. So in this lesson, we're going to discuss what the Properties panel can do for us. Now, we're going to continually come back to the Properties panel in a variety of different contexts. That's why I think it's very important for us to really get this out of the way even before we start creating anything from scratch. We really understand what the value is and the application is of the Properties panel. All right, so if you recall, the Properties panel is over here in the upper right, my little hamburger. You can see that. And if it's not there, right, if you don't see it, just go ahead and click on the little hamburger on the right-hand side, and you will see it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and click on nothing. I know it seems a little bit weird, seems a little bit existential, but I'm going to go ahead and click on this little nothing, also known as my pasteboard over here. Why did I do that? I did that so I can see the properties of this entire slide. See that? I'm actually in the slide properties. Let me go over to here to this one. Notice I'm in a different slide. Now, how do I know for sure that this slide is the slide I'm looking at? Notice how it says welcome layout here. This says welcome layout here. Click on this. This says start course. Click on this one. This is course topics layout. Okay, great. So notice I'm not selecting anything actually on the slide itself, right? I'm just clicking on the pasteboard, which basically gives me the option for the properties of the entire slide. What am I going to see here? The Properties panel is broken down into a number of different components here. Right, you can see here is the name of the slide, the theme of the slide. I click on that drop down. It may or may not show more options. This is the OSHA theme. You'll also notice how I can actually go to different master slide layouts. So if I click on this, you can see, oh, this is how I could potentially change the layout of something, right? If I wanted to, right? So if I want to change the layout of this entirely to something else, I can click on that and it should just override it entirely. Wait for it. It's kind of churning it out and like, holy cow, it just overrode that. I'm going to do Control Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo that. And that's going to take us back to where it was. And now you'll notice that when that happens, you may have some issues there, right? Notice how my button got a little bit messed up there. Okay, so keep that in mind. When you override it, there may be some artifacts there. So keep that in mind. I'm going to have to go fix that. So that's just some, little bugs you might find within Captivate. All right, so let's come back to this. You can also see here I have the option to reset in case I want to reset it back to a place where it was before. And that actually got me in a little bit of a better position. So in case, for example, if you make some tweaks and you wanted to reset it back to where it was, you can go ahead and say reset to where the master slide or the layout wanted you to be all along. If this does not make sense to you right now, don't worry about it. We're going to go into all kinds of details on layouts and also master slides. Okay, that's why the master slide view is going to be there. Now, within the Properties panel, you'll also notice how I have 3 additional tabs happening here. Oh, that's interesting. I have a tab called Properties, but then within that tab, I have 3 other sub-tabs. Okay, so if I click on Style, I get all kinds of different options, right? Within Style, I click on Actions, and look at that. I get a whole bunch of other things here. So let's go over here to slide number 2, and I want you to notice how this says Style, right? Some options. Click on Actions. Okay, there's something else happening here, right? So you're going to want to keep an eye on that. Click on Options, 3rd tab, and you can see I can add audio to this if I wanted to this particular slide. right? This one slide. Pretty nice. All right, so let me go ahead and go back over to here. You can see same options, same options. Pretty cool. All right, excellent. Let's see what other options I will see within my properties panel. So let's just say, for example, I'm going to go back to slide number 1, and this time I'm actually going to click on an object. And you'll notice how I get a whole bunch of different options appear here within my properties panel. Right now I have properties, timing, and a few other options here that I may or may not be seeing, just depending on which theme you've chosen and also what type of objects you're working with. But the key to understand is that within my properties panel, I'm going to see a whole bunch of different options here, right? Here is the name of this particular layer that I'll be working with. You can see here is the start course title. Let me just zoom in on that. So you can see these two are talking to each other, right? You can see this, right, is talking to this guy way over here. Let me zoom back out to this guy over here. So these two work with each other. So if I just change this to start, and then I'm just going to call this program title, and you can see now down below, this changes, okay, to program title, okay? So really important to understand all that, how that works. Okay, we're going to get into more detail on a lot of these other things, including state views, and we talk about buttons and things like that. You will notice a few other elements here. Style names. Wow, that's something exciting. We'll be exploring that. You're also going to see how I have my styles, and then within I have a whole bunch of very important, but admittedly very, very hidden sets of options here. Like, whoa, these are really, really important. So let's say I wanted to change my font, right, to something completely different. Look at that. That's all kind of hiding in there. Like, I couldn't see that otherwise because it was way up here. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is how the properties interface works. So lots of good options there. Also take a look at my actions. So for a good example is this begin button. This has an action associated with it. I click on that, and what is the action? To go to the next slide. A lot of things will not have actions on them at all, but because this is a button, it does. Okay, and that's all again built into the properties panel as one of my tabs here. So let me come down to another thing here. Let me go over to here to, let's just say, a picture. Okay, you can see there's a picture, and you'll notice how there's no actions tab here. Why is that? Because it's not a button, right? There's no action to be had here when the user clicks on it. So keeping that in mind. But what this does have is a set of options that I can play around with to transform this image, right? I can go over here to style, and you'll notice actually this has a fill inside the shape. So really this is about just giving you a broad overview for when we finally actually start working with it, all the different elements that you can explore again on your own, really. So you kind of at least have a working knowledge, so you're not afraid to experiment once you're ready to go further with some of these elements by using the properties panel. Now, to be clear, the properties panel not only allows you to see what's going on, but it also allows you to make changes to what's going on. Okay, so if I were to change this, I'm going to go ahead and just double click on this everyone, and then notice the color of this, right? Notice it's bold, right? Notice the font type. Okay, so let's go ahead and change that font type to something else, right? I'll just change this to Courier, right? Bam, I can change that. Let's change the size. Okay, bam, I can do that very easily. Okay, let's make it italic. Okay, great. So it's not only telling me about what this looks like and all the parameters and all the properties on it, but it does give me the option to make changes to it. All throughout all of these lessons, we're going to keep coming back to the properties panel. Okay, so just really keep in mind that it is incredibly, incredibly useful, and is going to be the more common places you're going to be going. So definitely get comfortable with it. Okay, really go in, start clicking on things everywhere, see what properties are available, and don't forget to just check out some of these other things that might be kind of hiding inside of here. Like, wow, all these really great features are going to be available here. A lot of great features available depending if this is an action or not. For many things, you're going to see an option for timing as well. Okay, so if I click on this right here, I want you to notice within the properties panel, I have a timing tab. Do you see that? So, oh, well, that's really interesting. So this is going to tell me how long something is going to display for. Oh, okay, that's actually really important to know about. Let's go over to here to this right here, right, you can see, okay, this is image 44, okay, which I probably should rename that. All right, we learned about that earlier, but you can see that this is going to appear after 0 seconds and it's going to display for the rest of the slide. Now the timing panel, right, which lives inside of properties, okay, again, keeping that in mind, gives me a whole host of other options that we're going to be exploring in the future, including animation and potentially a whole bunch of other options down below in terms of transitions and things like that. Go explore, not just within properties and these other subtabs, but also your timing tab that happens to live inside of your properties. Okay, we'll get into these other ones in the future, but I think this is now enough for you to digest, taking a look at the properties of the slide as a whole, and then also taking a look at the properties of the individual objects, okay, that you've selected. All right, to not only know what the properties are, but also to modify the properties. For many of you, when you first open up Captivate, this is going to be the first screen that you see. Now you're going to notice there are 3 tabs up on top. There's a recent tab, a new tab, and a resources tab. Now the new tab allows you to create a variety of different types of projects. A responsive project, right, which we've been working with to make it available on mobile devices as well as desktop devices. In the future, we're going to talk about virtual reality projects. Plain old blank project will allow you to do something that is available just on the desktop and it will not be responsive. And maybe for some of you, that's all where you want to be right now, right? Because it's just going to simplify it. And everybody you know, everybody on your team is not going to be looking at it on mobile. Maybe that's by design because you want things to be more easily viewable, right? You don't want people to look at it on their phone because they're missing out. Just do a plain old blank project. Then you have these other options here like software simulation, video demo from PowerPoint. You have other ways to get to these as well, which we'll be exploring in just a little bit, and I alluded to it, but you can see here under File, this is still live, you can go over here to New Project and then check out all those similar options there, including blank, responsive, virtual reality, etc. So you can absolutely get to these through this File menu just the same. You also have this recent, right? So you can see here's my recent, and then here's our safety course right there, some other files I've been working with. One thing I want to talk about for you to explore on your own is all these pretty amazing resources. Okay, so Captivate gives you a number of different really helpful places to start, right, with all these little templates available. Okay, so you can see a number of them with a variety of different types of applications, different pre-built menus, right, pre-built images, all that stuff that you'll want to explore without question. Here's one just on virtual reality, right? So you put on your VR goggles and it's going to take you through this property, okay? We're going to learn how to do all that in a future lesson. But now this is called resources. So the resources are not just templates, right? But if you scroll down, you can see a whole bunch of how-tos, right? You can see all kinds of different things here, right? Which I highly recommend checking these out, right? There are a lot of options here in terms of, working with compliance, drag and drop, okay, working with advanced interactions, right? All kinds of good stuff here. So highly recommend checking those out. Highly recommend downloading some of these as well. I'm going to go ahead and go over here to New and say Blank Project. Okay, so I click on that. And then it's going to ask me, well, what size is your blank project, right? So you can see here it is, okay, just like that. Now, it's really going to be up to you, but this is a pretty good standard, okay, because this is your kind of your average screen resolution. But if you click on the drop down, if you know the screen resolution is going to be different for everybody you're working with, just know that you have options to work with here, right? If I know it's all going to be 1024 by 768, bam. That's going to be my screen resolution. All right, so it's really up to you. Now I'm good to go. I'm going to click on Create. And just like that, I am now in a new project. All right, now keep in mind, this is a new non-responsive project. And again, this may be what you want it to do, but just keep in mind, if somebody's viewing your project in a mobile device, all of your different objects may not readjust to the size of that particular device. Okay, and we're going to be doing a whole bunch of lessons on that. Okay, but just keep that in mind. Now, let's just say we want to do a responsive project. So let's take a look what that's going to look like. And we're going to do that directly from here. So I'm going to go here to File, New, and also note that here is the shortcut for just Control H. I'm going to say responsive. It's going to render just like that. And now you're going to see nothing really is majorly different here, except for the fact that I now have this layout preview set of options. Right? And you'll also notice that I can actually choose between different types of devices, right? So if I choose iPad right now, you'll notice how my resolution then changes, right? Let's go back to desktop. You can see that. Okay, that's great, right? And we're going to be exploring all of these, but I just want you to know how we can actually do one or the other, how it's done. And then as we progress throughout these projects, you're going to see what the process is and what the differences are. So we're going to be kind of going more or less in lockstep of how we work with different elements and bringing in different components, looking at our properties for both of these different types of projects, where responsive projects are going to have a little bit more nuance to it. A lot of the interaction in terms of bringing in media, bringing in text, changing themes and all that good stuff, it's going to all overlap. But when you're working with responsive, it's going to be more about these fluid boxes and how we can actually adjust those. Okay, so that's where we're going to get a little bit more advanced, but we are going to do that in this series of lessons. Okay, so that's just the basics of working with creating something new, and we're going to start building off of these that we have here to actually start adding on themes and all kinds of different content. All right, so pause the video, practice that, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Before we start creating our designs and bringing in content, I think it's important for us to show the distinction between what a regular non-responsive document looks like and a responsive document. Earlier, we created this document here, right? We didn't do anything with it, but you can see how easy it was to create both the non-responsive and the responsive. This is not really set up the way that Captivate needs it to be until we start doing something called fluid boxes. What does that imply? Basically, we want to make it so when somebody resizes their window, right, it can be fluid, right? And what does that resizing the window mean? It means it's going to be a different size depending on the device. Could be a different size if they actually manually resize it. All of our content then readjust according to that screen resolution. The first thing we have to do is make sure we have some fluid boxes applied. And that is what is going to give us the containers for all of the different elements that need to then readjust and be, wait for it, responsive to the different screen resolutions. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go over to here to fluid box, and I'm just going to say that I have a horizontal, or it could even be vertical at this point, but I'm just going to do one big horizontal fluid box. So I click that, and I'm just going to choose one. But just notice I can do several of these if I want to. I'm just going to do one as one big fat container. I want you to notice what happens here. I have an FB5. Your number might be a little bit different, just depending on how many you have done recently, but bam, there you have it, FB4 fluid box. Pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead now and add on another one. Let's go ahead and do vertical. I do that, and this time I'm going to say 2. And you'll notice now I have 1 and 2 living inside there. Now let's take a look at our properties panel. I want you to notice, bam, here it is, here it is, here it is. And of course, I can rename these very easily just by selecting them and then changing all the names up here if I like. All right, now also note that I can then resize these, because let's say, for example, I'm going to have a banner up here. I want that to be resized right there. Okay, and I'm going to have a bunch of content within here as well. As you start to progress what types of content you want to put in there, you want to make sure that they live inside these fluid boxes. All right, so let's go ahead and continue adding on here. So I have something here, and I'm just going to say fluid box. I'm going to do, let's just say 3 horizontal. Right, they're going to now live inside of this one here. So if we take a look at the structure that's now been created by Captivate, it's showing me that these 3 live inside of this one right here. Okay, that's really easy to see. Okay, that's great, fantastic. All right, and then there's this one right here. That's going to be my banner, and this is going to be kind of my master. So let's actually name that. Okay, so I'm just going to maybe call it parent. Parent FB. And then it automatically puts in the underscore form. I don't have to worry about that. Okay, and then I can just say here, all right, this is going to be my left text underscore FB. So you can see, bam, I know what it is. Okay, good idea to start getting organized with all that, so you kind of know what's what as you're doing these. Okay, so this one might be an image, right? So image center underscore FB. This one will be maybe text right FB. You'll see how all that works. I'm going to do one more here because I'm going to put in a logo, place for a logo on the right hand side. So watch this. I'm going to go over to here. I'm going to say let's do horizontal, and I'm going to do 2 just like that, and then I'm going to do a little spot right there. That's where my logo is going to go. So you see how I'm structuring all this here. Now this one, I click on it. This is selected, and I'll just call this logo FB. This one, I'm going to call this banner FB. Okay, so as I start to bring all this content in and I resize all of my windows, okay, therefore to be responsive to the device, all of these will shrink and all the content that lives inside it will then shrink. In order to illustrate this, let's actually take a look at a document that's already been created that has fluid boxes inside of it, i.e. responsive. All right, and we take a look at this one, and I'm just going to go ahead and select this, go to here, and we're going to see that this has a set of fluid boxes on there. Do you see that? All of these things here. That's great. Let's try this one, for example, slide number 3. Click on here. This one has quite a bit. And now we can see there is everything there. Now, not labeled. Good idea to label these as we move forward. Okay, so let's now see this in different views. Okay, let's go ahead and just see this in an iPad. And we see, because this has fluid boxes around it, and notice how we don't really kind of miss a beat, right? We're not actually, it's kind of readjusting its content there, right? So let's go ahead and now try it with an iPhone. And you see what that does there? Okay, so we don't actually lose the text. The text doesn't just suddenly disappear into the ether over here. It shows us as the preview within that device's screen resolution, okay, and then readjusts all the content as a result. All right, let's come back to my desktop. So just also note that you have some other options here. You can then manually do it just like that, because some of these may not be up to date with today's iPads. You can then make adjustments to them just to say, okay, you know what? They're actually now at 900 by 627. Okay, great. Or maybe you're doing an iPad Plus. You just want to see what that's going to look like. You're pretty much just kind of checking these, as you are creating them to make sure that you're not going to lose any content. Now, earlier we talked about doing the preview option. So if I go to preview, and now I'm going to say project. Okay, now here I am within this project, and I want you to notice up on top here, I have the ability to now make those adjustments, right? Because guess what? This is a responsive project. Okay, so as I'm looking at this, let's go ahead and just see what that does. Here it is, more of an iPad, and then here it is, more of a phone. So I can actually see what it's going to do kind of in real time because of those fluid boxes. Let's do this one here, one more. Great, and you can see how everything readjusts accordingly. So very, very cool. So I'm going to close this. Now we're going to get into more detail on each of these as we go forward, but it is very important to understand that we need to create all of these first. Okay, now as we go forward with our content and as we start building out even things for our non-responsive, we're going to start building out some new layouts. Okay, but because one type of project is responsive and others are not, you're going to see that because we told it to start off being responsive, it's going to actually put in some of these fluid boxes for us. Okay, so just to kind of give you a little bit of foreshadowing for what's coming up. All right, but for right now, just understand that a responsive project needs these fluid boxes. How you want to structure them, the size you want to make them, where you want to place them, totally up to you. How you want to name them, totally up to you, but please do name them. And then once we start working with all these different layout options, you're going to start to see how easy it becomes once we get over this hurdle. All right, so get comfortable with this, practice, possibly bring in some content, but we're not doing that yet. But look at the ones that I provided for you so you can kind of just deconstruct that one on your own to be able to learn about something that's already been created so you can teach yourself for upcoming projects when we create something from scratch. Now that we've established how we can create new projects, both in a responsive and non-responsive environment, let's go ahead and just start building out on things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and save this, just in case anything happens. Always a good idea to save your work. It's currently untitled, so I'm going to save it in our Captivate folder here. Call this one, okay, course files. Okay, and now I'm just going to say safety lesson 2022. This one, I'm going to call it safety lesson. However, I'm going to call this one safety lesson 2022 responsive. So we know what the difference is. Okay, you can see again, I have all my different little fluid boxes right here, all set to go, all labeled and everything. This one does not have that. Okay, now let's start to build this out so we can actually insert new slides. And then after we do new slides, we're gonna look at how we can bring in different types of layouts. Okay, a couple of different ways that we can insert new slides. One way is just by simply clicking over here in the upper left. You're going to see we have slides, and what different types of slides can we do? We can do a content slide, and notice how this comes in with this just kind of generic looking placeholder set. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just bring this in a little bit so you can see the whole thing. All right, and you can see there's a placeholder there for me to bring in an image, placeholder there for me to bring in a title. All right, now this is all part of this theme, which we're going to talk about themes in a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to actually be able to override this if I want to as well. But for right now, this is what a content slide is. A blank slide looks like that. As you can guess, it is blank. If we go over to here to our responsive, right, I'm going to go ahead and do a new slide, but this time I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. Instead of clicking over here to do new slide, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say slides, and then you're going to see here is new slide from, and then guess what? Holy cow, I get a whole bunch of different options now for me to bring in a new slide based off of whatever kind of layout I want. Okay, so as opposed to just doing it from one of these generic ones here, I can do it again by right-clicking and then say slides, new slide from. And then for this one, I'm just going to say objective slide. And you'll see, okay, that's interesting. So let's actually try that so you can see kind of the similarities and the differences on a non-responsive slides. Let's go ahead and say right-click. I'm going to say slides, new slide from, and guess what? It's the same set of options. All right, so again, let's just try a slightly different one. Let's just say title and body, and you can see I have these. Now, what is the difference between both the fluid one, right, that has the responsive styles on there, and this one? Let's go back to it. I want you to notice we have all these little boxes here. Okay, you can see when I move my mouse over them, it actually comes built in with all of these FBs. What's an FB? It's a fluid box. Okay, so pretty cool. So I'm able to see, okay, good. So this stuff is already set up for me. So notice what happens when I click on it. I come over to here. I have these individual fluid boxes that come automatically with the different layout that I've chosen. Okay, of course, they're not named or anything like that. That's up to me to name them, but it's really nice because I've set this up to be a responsive project. It's going to then follow suit once I start bringing in new slides and all the layouts that are part of it, whereas these are not going to be. All right, so keep that in mind. Let's say I wanted to change these, right? And we're gonna go back and forth between these two, how we can actually change the layout. Okay, so what do I mean by layout? This is the layout, right? So all of these different kind of presets that are gonna have placeholders already there for me. So if I wanted to change, let's say this blank one to something else, very simply, we're gonna come over to this section right here, and then notice it says master slide, but ignore that. And let's just go over to here to this little drop down arrow, and you're gonna see something very similar. Now, let's just say I decide I wanna do title and body slide dark, and you can see I've now just changed that from a blank to a different layout slide, okay? So the first way we did it was actually inserting a new slide, whereas this way was now saying, hey, listen, I have a new slide, but I want to change the look and feel of it. Okay, so pretty nice. So if I go back to, let's say, one that's already built out, and I'm going to go over to this one, and I'm going to come over here again to the same dropdown, and then take a look at all these different options I have here. Let's go ahead and change it to something different. I'm going to say 3-row layout, and let's just see what that does. And just like that, I've made the changes. And again, because this is a fluid responsive style, you'll see when I click on these little areas right here, right, the little tabs, it shows me all of these, right, different fluid box options that I can go ahead and select. And of course, I can also rename them. All right, and let's do it again. I'm going to right click. I'm going to insert a new slide from, and bam, look at this. I'm ready to do another section altogether. Let's do that. And you can see these are all set up with the different fluid boxes all ready to go. Okay, so just keep that in mind, right? Once you create something as a responsive project, everything follows suit when you are inserting a new slide and also when you're updating it to change it. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward in terms of creating our new content, right? Adding on new slides, and then also updating the new slides to a different type of layout. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, practice that. And what we're going to do in the next lesson is start working with different design elements. And welcome back, everybody. In this lesson, we are going to continue working on our 2 safety lesson blank slides that essentially have no sort of color or illustration, theme, or design to it. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to actually create some different themes and apply them to our individual slides here, right? You can see they have a little bit of color, okay? But we're going to kind of spruce it up a little bit more with our own kind of look and feel. What we're going to talk about now is something called our themes, okay? Now our themes are going to have a series of different fonts on them, maybe background colors, right? Maybe some background shapes, could be a variety of different things. Now you might be working with something that's already pre-built, and guess what? This one's already got a whole bunch of elements already built into it, right? So maybe your company has your own theme all built in, and that's what you're going to be working with, right? So, okay, that's pretty easy. Let me go ahead and get out of this for 1 second. We'll come back to this momentarily. But now let's see what we can do to build it out from scratch. The process is going to be the same regardless whether you are in a non-responsive or responsive design. How do I do this? Let's go over here to themes, and I want you to notice how this gives me just a little bit of themes here. You may not be able to see all of them, but you can see I have this abstract theme. I'm currently working with this blue veracity theme, right? But maybe you have some other ones like coastal US. Let me go ahead and just click on that. It gives me a little message saying all overrides to objects, styles, and properties will be lost. Do you want to continue? It's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Go ahead and click OK. And you're going to see what are these overrides? What are we talking about? You can see how the font changes, right? You see some of the placement changes, right? The color changes. And let's now take a look at our master slide section here, and you'll see, oh, look at this. Well, you know what? Let's actually make this into a title. Ah, dramatic difference and dramatic set of choices. When I click on this, right? Let's go ahead and just say, hey, I want to do content 04. And okay, look at that. So that's made a dramatic change for me. So let me just go ahead and do a few more. Let's just go ahead and just do this one. Okay, and let's do another one right here, blank. Very good. All right, and we'll just do the same thing just so you can see how when we're working with our responsive, we get very similar options. Now I'm going to go over here and go to themes. And now, again, one more time, let's just try this one, abstract. Click yes, and that's going to override the whole thing. Okay, and you can see now my title now looks like this, right? You can see, bam, there's my title. And you can see very easy to update and add. Now, some of you may not want this, so you might want to go a step further with what these options are. And that's where you can go over here to get themes. Click on that. And this is going to take you to Captivate and what they're offering, right? Their little asset library. Now, we're going to be exploring a few more of these as we go throughout our classes here, but just know what other options are available, right? Here's our abstract. We just saw coastal. Let me just go ahead and try this one that's called harmony, okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and say apply. It's downloading it. All overrides to object styles and properties will be lost. You want to continue? I'm going to say yes, sir. And now you can see, just like that, I got a whole new theme happening, right? And again, if I want to right click now, I'm going to say slides, new slide from, and you can see, all right, whole bunch of different options here. Okay, very nice. I like that. Now, you may not want to have this background. You might want to have this on the left side instead of on the right side. We're going to change that a little bit when we get into our master. Let's now see what we can do with our design in case we want to make some kind of custom changes. I'll come back to here. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to click back on themes and we're going to choose our theme properties. You choose that, we're going to see here how we have our theme fonts and our theme colors. Okay, so your theme fonts, essentially we're looking at what's going to be your heading and what's going to be your main body content. What's really nice is that as I move my mouse over it, you'll be able to see how I get real-time changes. Okay, so let's go ahead and choose that one. Right? And then for my colors, let's go over here to this one. Let's just see as I move my mouse over it, I'm going to get all of these options available to me. Okay, and if there were more colors to work with, then I'd be able to see those changes be reflective in a more kind of like global sense here. Okay, so let me just find one that may work for me. You can see, bam, that first color. Now, if you're not clear on what each of these things does, you can go a step further into Edit. With Edit, now you can see, okay, this is the name of this theme font, but I might actually want to go a step further with all of these and say, listen, you know what? I don't want Tahoma. I want to try a little bit of a different one, right? So let's go to maybe just something a little more kind of bold. Okay, so I'm going to choose, let's just try this Arial Rounded. All right, and then for font 2, just so we can really see the difference, let's choose something completely different. Let's go to Courier. And then for my colors, let's going to go ahead and make this color right there. And let's just see what that does. And just like that, I've made those changes. I come over to here and I'm able to see there's my Arial Rounded. There's also my Arial Rounded. So once I start bringing in different other types of captions, you're going to see, these are all titles, but once I start bringing in regular text captions, I will see that other font style. And what's good news about this is that you're going to be making global changes across the board. And that's what I encourage you to do, right? Because of these kind of theme styles, you want them to be kind of consistent, right? So when you make these changes, it becomes a global change, right? It's not just one slide, right? So it's good practice to have is that you make these kind of global changes. Okay, now if you like this theme, you like everything that you've done, all the customization you've done, including all of the colors and the fonts and everything like that, and you want to share that with your teammates, you're now going to go, believe it or not, to this themes dropdown. You're not going to actually see it here, right? There's no way to actually like save the theme here. So if you want to save this, you would say themes and you'd say save theme as, and then you're going to be saving it as this CPTM or Captivate theme file. Okay, and then you can save this wherever you want, right? So I'll save this to my desktop, call it whatever you want, and then later on, what your teammates are going to do is then browse for that, right? You're going to go and say, hey, listen, can I find a CPTM file? And guess what? I'm going to find that on my desktop. And then essentially, that's how you import a theme. So if you are creating a theme and you want to be able to share that with people, this is how you do it, right? Kind of round trip. All right. So go ahead and just tinker around with that, apply different themes, maybe download some different themes, right? Make some changes inside of your theme properties, see where you go. But then what we're going to do next is we're going to go into the hood a little bit more and go into our master slide view. Following up on the lesson that we just did working with our themes, we're now going to talk about working with our master slides. And this is going to be critical for ownership of your design. Right? Because a lot of these themes, they're great, you know, and you can certainly explore more themes that they have available for you. And you can certainly go and you can look at your theme properties. But if you really want to tinker and get kind of like full control over things, That's where you go into the master, okay? And the master is going to allow you to change all kinds of different things and add all kinds of different things under the hood. So we're going to start off looking at it from the non-responsive side. All right, so here I am, and I'm going to go over to here to this master slide view. I click on that, and right now, things don't seem to ostensibly change a whole lot, but let's just see what's going on here. First of all, I want you to notice instead of film strip, it says master slide. And then what we're looking at here is all of the different layouts, because every single one of these layouts is their own sort of master, right? Their own sort of like mini theme that you can then control, right? Notice this is title, this is blank, content 1, content 2, all those things we saw earlier. Now, if we want things to be slightly different for this layout, we can absolutely do that. Okay, so as an example, I can go ahead and just select this. There it is, right? It's all set up, ready to go. And I decide, you know what? I actually want this to be right aligned. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then if I want to adjust the margin, right, we're getting a little taste of text. We haven't done text yet, but you can see if I want to adjust the margin, I can move my mouse over that and then just click and drag that a little bit to the right. Okay, very nice, cool. Now I'm getting a little bit more space between the side there. Okay, that's easy. Or I can just simply click on it and I'm going to say 40 and then bam, then I'm done. Now, if I don't want this particular title to have the Arial, but I want everything else to have Arial, I can override that as well. So I can go ahead and click on this now, and then let's just choose another one. Let's try that one. And then let's make that a lot bigger. Let's go to 72. All right, very cool. Now I have now tinkered with the title slide for the master. Okay, so every time I now do the master that has this title slide layout, it's going to look like this. If I don't want, for example, to have this image, notice it says the background, this is going to be my slide color. What's my slide color? It's going to be this image, right? We've set it to be this custom image, right? But notice they give you all kinds of other options if you want, right? You can do the custom image, or you can bring in some of these little patterns here or whatever. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and don't wanna do that. I'm gonna keep it at that, but just know I can do that if I want to. Let's just take a look at maybe another one of these, right? Let's go to, again, a more kind of simple one here. Let's go ahead and say we wanna center this. Let's center it. Let's go ahead and make the color white. And then we can see potentially other options I might want to do. Look at our margins here. Let's just go ahead and bring that up a tiny bit. So it's just kind of maybe centered right there. Now that I'm here, maybe I want to do some other things too. Maybe I want to bring in, let's just say, a logo of sorts. Okay, I can actually bring in a logo and make it be on every single one of these types of pages. Let's now bring in an image. The question is, do I want it to be on every single slide? Or do I want my logo to be just on some slides, but for every time there's a layout, that it then shows it only on those types of layouts? I'm going to decide, listen, I want it to be on every single slide. Now, one little caveat is to understand that what I'm about to do is I'm going to put it onto this sort of like headmaster that's right up here. It's going to put it on every slide and the slide layout, except for ones that have the title and also blank, right? And there might be some other exceptions, but let's just see what we can do here. Earlier, we talked about putting things and manipulating each individual layout. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my headmaster is what I'm calling it, and I'm going to insert from my media icon here, I'm going to insert an image. Now you'll notice, right, this is going to be our first lesson on images. You'll see here I can do all kinds of different images if I want to, JPEGs, GIFs, right, PNGs, right, across the board. Right, so I'm going to bring in this little logo, and that's going to come in. Now I want you to notice that a lot of these guys see now show, bam, 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 there is that same thing I'm doing across the board, right? So pretty much goes across the board, including the title, in fact, right? Depending on the theme, sometimes it won't do it. So if that's going to be the case, you don't want it on the title, then you might want to consider, right, that you're only going to do it on certain layout options, okay? So let me go ahead and just bring this over here. I'm going to make that nice and small, bring that here. And now, in order for me to see it live, and actually on the normal view and the film strip, I need to get out of the master. So you can see here is this option to exit the master. I come out of this, and now let's take a look on every slide here. You can see, bam, there that is. Pretty cool, right? Every single slide, okay, except for, again, a blank, right? Not going to see that. Now, let's go and add on another one. So I'm going to go ahead and say right click, slides, new slide from, and then guess what? There's my preview, and you can see it for every single one of these. Let's choose content, and look at that. It's going to be right there, okay? Now, can I click on that? No, I can click on this box, but I can't click on this. I can't move it. I can't do anything because it is essentially connected to the master and not actually to the film strip view here. Okay, so if I wanted to make this go to the right-hand side, I would have to go back into the master slide view and then make those changes, right? Back up here to my headmaster, come over to there, and then now I can move this, and then bam, they're all gonna move over there. Exit out of this, and there you have it. And it's going to be there on every single one of these. One thing you might be thinking about also is the layering around this. So just keep in mind that this is now going to be covered up by this image, right? So if I were to bring in an image in here, right, which again, you're going to see here's another way I can bring in an image, right? So you can see, right, this is going to take me to my library, which we're going to talk a little bit. Let me go ahead and click on import. Let's just go back to our class files. Let's go right here to images and assets. All right, and then I'll just bring this in. Okay, and then bam, notice what happens here. Oh, what happened to my logo? What's going on here is that our master slide objects are not on top. So what you need to do is simply click in this kind of neutral area. Remember, so the whole slide, right, actually gets selected, not the elements in the slide. And very simply, just choose master slide objects on top. Right, click on that, and then, okay, very good. So it'll no longer get overridden. Just keep that in mind, good one to know about. Now, if we're working with our responsive, okay, you're gonna see it's gonna be very much the same thing. So let's come back over to here, right, I'm out of this, okay? And then I'm gonna go over here to my master slide view. All right, now the difference here, of course, as you can probably guess, is that these are all going to have all of our fluid boxes here that we're gonna need to work with. Okay, so it's very important. It is going to get potentially a little bit more complicated, okay, for each of these individual fluid boxes, but you'll just need to change them inside of the master view as opposed to doing it, elsewhere. But very similar, if I wanted to make this left aligned, I can do that. If I wanted to make this bold, I can do that. Okay, and this is affecting just this one particular layout. Let's go back over to our headmaster and let's go and bring in our media and image again, and let's bring in our logo, and you're going to see the process is just the same and the outcome is just the same. Okay, and if I wanted to bring in some text, that's going to be on every single one here. Let's go over here, go to text caption, and this is going to pop up. I'm just going to say copyright, okay, 2022, and that's going to be down there in the lower left. Highlight that, okay, make it nice and small, and let's change the color. All right, and there you have it. Let's see it in action. That's going to be on all the different slides that I'm going to be able to see it as available. Let's go over here to slides, new slide from, and let's just choose content, and bam, there it is. Okay, because I only put it on that particular one, but my logo shows up on every single one. And because this is one of those examples where this does not actually have it, if I wanted to see the logo on this particular layout, I would have to do that one manually. Okay, so notice again for my master view, you can see that some of them have it, some of them don't. Okay, so this is one of them that does not have it. So if I needed to do that, I can do that manually. So go ahead and copy that, Control C, and I will find that layout. And I'll go ahead and paste it here, and you'll notice something kind of fun happens. I don't actually see it, and this is going to actually give us a little taste of what we're going to see in a future lesson once we start talking about the timeline a little more and we start working with layering, okay? Because it's actually underneath all this stuff here. Might as well show you while we're having this lesson. Notice here it is. I'm just going to go ahead and drag this puppy where it needs to go. And bam, there you have it. Come out of this, and now, aha, every single slide has it. So whenever you're dealing with these kind of individual layouts, you may have a little bit of kind of tweaking to do. So again, the same question comes up. Let's say I want to save this for future elements, right? So for future projects, right? I want to actually just go ahead and say, go to my themes and then save the theme, because now this is a new theme altogether because I've now manipulated the master. It's still part of the same theme, but now I've decided, listen, I'm going to manipulate this even more. And then you save it, and you can even save it as the same name and then go ahead and browse for it to re-import it once again. So what we're going to do in the next lesson is we're going to work with something called placeholders, and that's going to be kind of next level for us as far as our master slide view. All right, so pause the video, practice that, absolutely get comfortable with your master slide view. It is incredibly important in terms of taking ownership over all of your themes and all your design elements. Okay, we'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to work with type and text and bringing in all of our type content. Now again, it's going to be slightly different for when we're working with non-responsive and responsive slides. You will see that many of the layouts already have the type placeholder already set up. Okay, so if I click on this now, you can see very simply, I can just say how to report an incident. Simple as that, right? So that's really nice because the placeholder's already there. In a little bit, we're going to talk about how to do that within the master, how we can actually make it so we have different placeholders, but you can see nice and easy, that's how that's done. Now you can see I can go ahead and click on this and it's going to be the same deal. And this will say, okay, OSHA rules. Okay, and you'll see down below, I might have some other stuff here all ready to go. I'll just say here, report to your supervisor any known violations. Okay, but I want to make that, let's say, for example, into a bullet. You'll notice over here on the right-hand side, I have all my like bullets and numbering and all kinds of great options there for me to work with. Okay, now this is going to bring us into this section about working in our properties panel for our type. Okay, for all of our text options. Okay, so we looked at this earlier. Then we'll be able to explore all those things even more as we start to explore these. Okay, as we start to actually work with type a little bit more. Let's say I wanted to work with type in a way where I had some things I wanted to bring in that's not necessarily part of a theme. It's not necessarily part of any of these layouts that I've established. Okay, so let's go over here to my blank slide. And I want it to be blank, but I also kind of just want to have a little bit of text here. Maybe, for example, I might bring in an image, okay, which I'm going to show you how to do in just a second, a little review. And I might want to put a little caption over the image. So if I go over here to assets, go over here to image, and let's just go ahead and bring in, let's just say, this little picture of a forest, but I want to have a little bit of type right here. That's when I would go to text and then text caption. Okay, and then when I go to here, you'll notice here is going to be, right, a little text box for me to then work with. Okay, and then this is going to give me the ability to then move it around wherever I want. Okay, so I mean, all these things you can move wherever you want, but just know this is not necessarily part of any theme or anything like that. Then, of course, I can then resize this to a different size. And what happens is I need to now resize the text box to then reveal my text. You'll see I also have a whole bunch of other options here in terms of making it bolder. We already talked about all of our alignment options. We can talk about color, and you have all kinds of different other types of effects you can play with here, right? Here's our color. You want to maybe highlight it, right? Notice you can do something like that. It actually acts like a highlighter. And you got some other things here which I would experiment with. We're not going to get into too much detail here, but I'll just show you one just like that. And okay, pretty nice, really good for titles. And especially if I were to make this nice and big, that'll actually have a little bit more of an impact. Pretty cool. Working with type is relatively straightforward. Okay. Later on, we are going to get into different types of type, including different types of captions, but we're going to keep it very simple for right now, because what's important for us to discuss is working with type in the responsive environment, because it is going to be a little bit different. So let's come over here to our responsive environment. And I want you to see, let's just say, for example, I'm going to do a new slide and new slide from, and then let's just go ahead and bring in some type from here. Okay, just like that. Now I want you to notice how I have this fluid box right here. Okay, and you'll notice, right, here's my element right there, right? And you can see I can click inside there. Now, what's happening here inside of this is that I can't necessarily control my kind of margins in this way, right? The way that I would like, because the way that things are set up with my fluid boxes, it's really begging me to sort of like control the margins of the fluid box to make it so when somebody does look at it on another device, it actually knows how to sort of move within the box itself. So let's just see kind of what we're looking at. Let me just go ahead and click away, come back over to my fluid box here. And I want you to see something kind of important, okay? Where we're gonna see all these different options down below, including my padding. Okay, so I go ahead and choose this, making it so my padding is 50 pixels from horizontal and also for my vertical. And notice there's nowhere to go from there, but just know that that actually really helped out. Let's do it again. You can see how I brought that in. Okay, so the vertical didn't work because it's already kind of far apart. That's going to be very important when you start working with your content in such a way so you can actually make it have that kind of control. All right, let's go ahead and now kind of look at one from scratch, right? When we kind of start from the beginning, right? So I believe this is the one that I'm gonna go ahead and start from a brand new one, okay? Because we had one earlier. Let's go ahead and just do that one more time. So I'm just gonna do a blank content slide, all right? And I'm going to say, listen, I'm going to do a fluid box. Okay, that's going to be just one, just like that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is put on another one, just like we did earlier. I'm going to say vertical, and let's just see what that one looks like. Okay, that's great. And now, remember what we did in an earlier lesson, I'm just going to put in two more just right in here. Okay, so I'm going to go to fluid box and then to horizontal. Okay, and now this guy right inside of here, okay, I'm going to now go ahead and select this so I can now make this like my banner, like I showed you earlier. But for this banner text, I want this to not be so flush over to the left. So let's watch this from the beginning. I'm going to now select this one here. And again, it's going to be important to rename this. I'm going to say banner FB, and I'll just say banner text FB. All right. And notice that is selected, has a little blue box around it. I'm going to say text caption. And now that's here. Okay. And you can see kind of what it's doing here, right? So text caption here, and it's deciding to kind of go left, center, right, whatever. It's totally up to me, but it's very much to the left right now. Now I could play around with my margins here, right? But what I would recommend you do is you actually do it on the fluid box. Okay, it's going to actually give you a lot more sort of predictability about where things are going to end up on the responsive side when you look at it on a mobile device. Okay, so again, if I click here, let's go make sure that we can actually see it. There it is. And now what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, we're going to take a look at some of our kind of potentially more advanced options for our fluid box. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our padding. So let's make that kind of shove over a little bit more to the left and then a little bit more down. Good. So now I'll be able to see that this is going to have a little bit more room for this text box here. So the whole box then gets moved over. And if I were to preview this, then I would actually see it. Okay, so let's just go in and we can say, welcome to the safety training. Okay, and what we're going to do here is we're going to bring in our logo. Okay, so notice I've selected it. I'm going to go over to here to media, image, and that fits in nicely, perfectly. We're going to do a whole lesson on working with images in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and now click away. And now let's see this, okay, where I'm going to just say, okay, write logo FB. All right, and guess what? I'm going to have a lot of these same options for me to work with here. So let's just see what happens if I make this 30, make this 30. Okay, good. So it was smart enough to then resize the image for me. So just understand kind of what's going on here. Okay, so let's now take a little preview of what this is going to look like in different devices. So I'm going to go over to here, and I'm going to just make this iPad. All right, and then what's going on there? Well, let's go over to here to our phone. Let's try. All right, good. All right, you can see what that's doing there. All right, so let's go ahead and bring that back to the desktop. If we take a look at some of our extra options here, right, if we go back to here, we're going to see what's actually going on, why it's doing what it's doing, right? For our content flow, is it going to flow vertically, horizontally? We'll be able to experiment with that. Okay, our wrap options, wrap to the next column, squeeze in a column, one row, one column, symmetrical. This is going to be kind of a spice to taste type of thing, right? So if we were to change this now, and let's go ahead and just say iPad, okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, and if I were to kind of change that, you'll see, okay, that looks pretty good. I can probably keep it at that, all right? And then does that change anything? No, okay, I don't think I really need to change anything. It looks pretty good, right? I'm not really wrapping to the next column. Okay, center, yeah, I'm not really messing with this too much, right? That's pretty good. But now let's just see what happens when I go to the iPhone. Okay, I have a little bit of an issue here. So if I were to go to my banner text, let's see what I could potentially do now to make that work better, okay? Interesting. Oh, there we go, okay, good. So notice that testing it really made all the difference, because that would have really surprised me, right? That would have gotten me in a lot of trouble. So that's why it's very important for us to explore all of these options here, whether it's for text or whether it's for an image or otherwise, when we're working with our fluid boxes, okay? Because we are working with a potentially more kind of complicated system here than maybe that you're used to. So it's important to kind of do your own kind of quality assurance all throughout. Okay, so just kind of keep this in mind. All right, so pause the video, practice this, right? Let's just go ahead and just, play around to see what's going to work for you in terms of both a responsive and non-responsive design, and just make sure it's comfortable for you and really start building something out that's real, that you will be actually working from, whether it's, something like this or something completely different, but you'll notice that the process will be the same. So stay tuned for the next lessons on both images, but also working with placeholders inside of our master slides. In the last couple of lessons, I showed you how you can bring in images in a variety of different ways, but this is going to be our official lesson on how we can bring in images. We brought in images into our master. We also brought in images using some of these placeholders, and we also just brought in images, right, that were just kind of willy-nilly, not really connected to anything. So this is going to be a lesson on how to bring in images, also how to kind of manipulate our images a little bit, and also working with our library for the first time. All right, so let's go ahead and go to this kind of blank one, right? Just kind of big old empty canvas. And you're going to see how we have this option for media. Now, there's a lot we can do here, right? Notice there's image, there's SVG, and there's also asset library. Let's just start with image. And recall, we can bring in a number of different image files like JPEGs, GIFs, BMPs. We can even bring in Photoshop files and Illustrator and all that good stuff, being an Adobe program. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring in this image. And as I bring this in, I want you to notice that it comes in as a certain size. So very easily, we can resize this. All right, I'm just going to hold down the Shift key, constrain the proportions, and let me go ahead and just make sure that just this image is selected. And now I can just move that wherever I want. Okay, so this is a little more kind of free form with this image, right? I'm going to go ahead and resize that again, holding down the Shift key. If I don't hold down the Shift key, notice how you get a little stretchy, right? So go ahead and just undo all that with my Control Z, and then come back and then reset it just like that. Again, notice you can move it around wherever you like. You can resize it however you like, But also notice that you have this little option over here on the top that's going to allow you to potentially rotate it, right? So if you click and drag on that, you can rotate it. So let's say, for example, I was doing like a little collage. Let's go ahead and bring in another image. And I'll bring in this little guy right there. Resize that, hold down the Shift key, bring that right on top of it, rotate it just a tiny bit, just like that. And then I got a nice little kind of overlapping situation just like that. Kind of nice to be able to do that very quickly and easily. Now, when you select on an image, you're going to see a number of different options that you can work with over here on the right-hand side. So you will notice there's this option to edit the image. There's also the option to fit to the stage if you wanted to, right? You click on that. Oh my God, that's going to take over the whole thing, which maybe sometimes you want to do that because it's like, all right, I don't want to have to resize it myself. You'll have Captivate do it for you. In terms of the editing the image, they give you some kind of rudimentary types of editing tools that you can work with. So if I go back to here, right, I have my image that I'm working with. Here's my forest.jpg. I can choose edit image, and then it's going to take me to, again, this kind of rudimentary way of editing this image in terms of the brightness, the sharpness, the contrast. Okay, alpha just means the transparency. The hue just means the color. We can just kind of override the color. Saturation, just override the color with different colors, right? It'll go from green to red to purple to yellow, etc. Saturation just basically means how much of that color. My guess is you'll probably be working with brightness, quite a bit. Maybe making it a little bit darker, right? It's like, oh, let's go safely in there because it's dark. Maybe you want to do sharpness, right? It's going to kind of sharpen the edges a little bit. Notice how it got a little more crisp. Contrast, the darks will get darker, lights will get lighter. Okay, so again, kind of really nice ways to be working with this. Alpha, again, is just the transparency. You make it a little more see-through. So you can see how I'm seeing these little checkerboards there, and that'll allow us to do that, okay, if you wanted to do that. So notice that's going to be not see-through at all. And then the hue, it's really up to you if you kind of want to be a little creative about it. Again, look at that. Now we're in this kind of like purple world. Now we're going to be in something completely different. Totally up to you. And if you want your greens to be much greener, you can go ahead and just bring that way up, or you can make it into black and white. You bring that down entirely. Another way to make it black and white is by working with your grayscale right here. Grayscale, we'll just do it very quickly, make it do that. But you can be a little more creative with it. Or if you bring up the contrast and you make it grayscale, you can have kind of an interesting photo here, right? So you can really kind of play around with this to kind of get it be what you want. And this could look really nice with like some portrait shots as well. You also have some other options here in terms of flipping your images, right? If you want to flip it, right? Notice how it looks a little different now. See that? This way or going this way. So if you had two of the same images and you want to kind of create the illusion like they're different ones, you can absolutely do that. Then you also have the option to crop your images. Okay, so maybe this road is a little bit too long. I can crop this out. So if I choose crop, notice very subtly this little blue box appears. All you got to do is simply just put your mouse over the edge and then just kind of mask this out. Okay, you see that? All right, and then I'm going to say apply, and then I'm pretty much done at this point. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and now you can see it's now gotten rid of that. Okay, that little bottom part, and all my colors that I've kind of chosen in terms of to be a little bit more saturated has also been applied. Working with images is, it's not bad, right? If you have something to work with there, I would suggest working with these if you're not comfortable with Photoshop or any of these other programs. Just do it right here on the fly. We do have a few other choices to work with, right? Shadow and reflection, right? So you can see here, I can now that I have a little more room to work with, you can see I can do a little shadow, a little reflection, right? A few other things maybe a little more subtle. So let's go ahead and make that smaller so we can really, really see it. Okay, and maybe that's the look you're looking for. So let's try a different one, see a little more space there. All right, and within this same box, you can see how we have different choices of different types of shadows you can do. So let's go over here and go to this one, and I'm going to choose this image this time, and I'm going to go to inner shadow, and then maybe you want a kind of a little bit of a different look here. It might be a little more subtle, but if I scroll down now, you're going to see here, I can then adjust, kind of get this little kind of vignette happening here. Let's go bring up the distance a little bit. Okay, a little more Okay, good. Kind of bring in some of that color, adjust the angle of it. Okay, great. So again, check out what I'm doing. I'm just doing a subtle type of little shadow on this, okay? Just, you can do some Photoshoppy stuff on this image. Let's go over to this one. Let's just this time say outer. This is going to allow you to do what typically is called a drop shadow. So if I choose this one, for example, and then I scroll down a little bit, let's bring up the distance a bit so you can really see it. A little bit too far. Okay, that's fine. And let's bring up the blur a little bit. Okay, good. Now you can see how it kind of creates the illusion that it's coming off the page. But I'd suggest that maybe we bring this down. I'm just using my scroll wheel to bring this down to maybe it's about 15 or so. And you can see, okay, that's a little better. Now, if I've decided that I really, really like this and I want it for both of these, I can do that. So let's just go and get to this place that I really like. Let's just make this about 10, nice and subtle. Kind of blur it up a little bit. Let's kind of bring down the opacity. So it's just kind of subtle there, right? It's there, but it's not there, right? It kind of creates the illusion, of depth, like I said. And I want this image to have the same thing. Guess what? If I come over to here, you're going to see there's a little drop down, apply to all. I click on that. You say apply to all items of this type. I choose that, and guess what? I now see a little drop shadow here, just the same. My inner shadow still exists for this, but I've also now got an outer shadow. So kind of cool, right? So definitely worth experimenting with, right? Because images are going to be very important for you to work with across the board. Okay, now earlier we talked about working with our different layouts, okay? So just notice here how many times you're going to see these little placeholders all ready to go for you, okay? So let's now switch up to our responsive, and let's go over to here to a different layout here. So I'm going to go over here and switch this out from here to here. All right, and bam, again, remember you're going to see all your little fluid boxes here, including this is a fluid box too. But now notice I have a little placeholder. I click on that. When you click on it, actually double click on it, you're going to see how this is going to take me to my library items and also the option to go and import. So let's go ahead and first import, and then we'll kind of do something where we're going to see, well, what's our library all about? Okay, and this will kind of dovetail us into a nice discussion about our library. All right, so I'm going to click on import, and now let's bring in this picture, and that's great. That's lovely. That's amazing. Okay, and I can see that fits in perfectly in there. Absolutely extraordinary. All right, so now let's go ahead and go to another one. I'm going to go ahead and just do a new slide from. All right, I'm going to say content 4. I click on that, or excuse me, double click on it. And you're going to see there is my desert landscape now waiting for me, right, inside, connected to my library, right, we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Okay, so if I want to do that again, notice it's very easy to do because it's already inside my library. Pretty great, lots of great options to work with here. Now, again, keeping in mind now the fact that we're inside of our fluid box, I just want you to see what our options will be here, right? You can see if I wanted to kind of adjust some of this here, I can then adjust it all within the padding, okay? And of course, we're always going to want to test these out for the different views to make sure that nothing's getting a little funky, right? Okay, good, that stacks a little bit. Let's try our iPad. Good, that stacks a little bit. Okay, so you're going to want to always kind of play around with these to make sure that it works the way that you want it to work and looks the way you want it to look. Let's come back to our desktop, all right? And that's great. Okay, all right. So play around with images, pretty cool, and but all together sometimes a little bit hidden how we can work with some of these image options in a number of different ways. Okay, so pause the video, practice that, and we'll see you in the next lesson. This currently has no fluid boxes, okay? So what I need to do is actually create them. So let's now go ahead and insert a new slide, content master slide. Here it is. And then what we need to do, of course, is insert our fluid box. There it is. And then let's go ahead and just say vertical. I'll just do just like that. And you can see, all right, we're on our way. Let's maybe do click in there. And let's just do Bam, bam, bam. Excellent. Now we're ready to now start to put them in. So I'll just do a handful of these, maybe one or two, just to kind of get the picture. So here I am. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say placeholder object. And then let's just go ahead and just do an image. And I'm going to resize this and then just kind of pop it in here. Notice how it's like, okay, cool. That can now just pop right inside of that fluid box. Oh, okay. Good. You see what that does. Very nice. But keep in mind, when I click on this, go to here, and then check this out. If I want to have a little bit of room between this and this, I just have to adjust my padding. Okay, but sometimes you actually might want to make a nice little matrix so it's going to go across the board, right, with all of these if you want to, right? So just keep in mind you do have choices. All right, so let's just do one more. All right, I'm going to right click, placeholder object, and then let's go ahead and do image. And then let me just go ahead and drag it in and see what happens. Ah, look at that. It actually fills right into it. Okay, so that's kind of nice. Maybe I want to kind of adjust it even more just in case. All right, now of course you'd want to kind of try to achieve some perfection there. But for right now, we understand what we're doing, and then we're going to go ahead and test it out. So let's go ahead and just say 4 images on top. Excellent. Now I'm going to get out of this. And I'm going to do a new slide from 4 images on top. And look who's waiting there for us, including all of our fluid boxes. Click on that, or I should say double click once again. All right, that looks great. Double click. Let's go ahead to import. Let's go ahead and bring in our autumn leaves. And beautiful, lovely. And of course, this can still be edited if you want to, right? By kind of coming over here and working with all of our different image properties and all that stuff if you like. This is really important, really. Just kind of understanding how we can really control our content, right? This is kind of part 2 of working with not only our master slides and working with images, but also for placeholders to be able to really control what our masters are going to look like, what our layouts are going to look like. That's really going to help us ultimately to create the slides we want, but to also do it efficiently. Pause the video, and then what we're going to do after you practice is we're going to explore a little bit about the library. This is going to be something we're going to come back to over and over again as we start to build out more and more content. And welcome back. We are now going to talk about Adobe's amazing asset library. So there might be some times when you are looking for images, you're looking for projects, you're looking for characters, right? You're looking for all kinds of different things that you do not have availability or access to. You can work with Adobe's asset library. Okay, so let's just go ahead and first let's just check it out. I'm just going to go over here to a blank slide for right now. Go to slide, new slide from, and then let's just say blank. All right, and I'm going to go over here to media, asset library. And I want you to see how we have different categories over here on the left-hand side, right? Projects, characters, icons, 360 assets, images, etc. Now, if I were to click on this now, you're going to see how right off the shelf, you're going to be able to see all kinds of cool things that you can work with, right? Just to even get you started. Okay, so you can see here I have individual slides I can work with, and I also have entire projects I can be working with as well, right? That's where we got our safety from, okay? All right, so let's just start off with this slides. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just choose one of these, right? So kind of a neat one down here, right? Let's just go to tabs and buttons. I say insert slide, wait for it, it's gonna download it, inserting the asset, and just like that, now you've got these individual assets, right? Now you've got this slide to work with. Okay, that like I don't have to do anything at all, and it's already there. And maybe this is communicating what you want to communicate, right? So pretty cool. Now it comes in as these individual buttons, and potentially these buttons are actually doing something. If you click on actions, you can see it's actually going to do something. This is a little more advanced from our perspective, but the big takeaway here is working with the asset library to really explore what options are going to be available, right? So you can see it could even be kind of a very simple one. Right? Let's just go ahead and just try, maybe you're just working on some tabs, right? Or maybe you're just working on like people, right? Grids with text, pretty simple. And you can see all these people are now here, and you can very easily replace these images if you want to. Okay, you can replace their names. You can do all that good stuff there, right? So if this is something you know you want to do, use the assets. All right, let's go ahead and try another one. Go to Media Asset Library, and let's check out some other things here. Let's go over here to Character, and look at this. Amazing. So these individual characters can help kind of guide your user through their journey through your lessons, right? So notice how there's a whole bunch of different ones here. There's some illustrations, there's from different industries, right? Medical industry, maybe construction, business, right? There's different genders, right? Different ages, etc. So if you click on this drop down, you'll be able to see business, casual, medicine, illustrated. So if you wanted to, you can filter it out by these different ones. So let's just go over here to, for example, medicine. And then I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And you're going to see that Susan has all kinds of different sort of gesticulations and moods, right, that she can portray for you. So you can see, pretty cool, right, all kinds of different things there. Now, she also may be doing things like pointing to different parts. She could also be holding up different signs and things like that too. So maybe you want to put a text box on top of her and working with that, right? So let's just go ahead and just insert. There she is. Thank you, Dr. Susan. And there she is. And just like with other images, you can resize her, you can rotate her, you can move her around. Okay, hold down the Shift key. Wonderful. And then you can very easily bring in a text caption. There she is telling you safety first, and make that nice and big. Great. Make that bold. Okay, and change the color. And look at that. It's like she's saying it, like she's holding that up. Okay, now where did I get that? I got that again from my asset library. So from here, you'll also notice that there's other ones to explore, different icons, right? So this is really, really helpful. So you can see there's a lot of stuff here. Okay, so if I were to try to do a search, let's just say I'm going to type out the word phone. Oh, great. There's some things there. I'm saying, hey, contact us, right, via phone. Right, I'll try email. Okay, good. Look at that. They're going to give you lots and lots of options here to explore for different type of icons. They're nice and clean. They're all scalable. All right, then we have some other things like different assets, right? They're all going to be available. These are actually going to be virtual reality assets. So we're not going to really be working with these in this class. Here's some images, right? So let's just say medical. Okay, look at that. And these all pop up. And I can very easily choose one of these because I didn't have access to it. The asset library will allow me to do that, as well as working with videos, right? Some videos might be available. Bam, I can bring these in there if I want to, right? Of course, it has to be very specific to what you're working with, but sometimes they're going to be a little bit more abstract. You might want to just try that out, see what that's going to do, and then that's going to be like your cover. Okay, let's try that. Let's look at our dolphins. Okay, maybe you're just going to have that as the background, and then you put in some type on top of that. Okay, so you can, we're going to be working with video in later lessons, but you can see how nice this is. They give this to you, right? Same thing with audio potentially if you want to have some audio in the background. And also they've got a lot of buttons for you to work with as well. We're going to be working with buttons, but just know that this asset library is pretty incredible for all these things. And finally, here are some of the themes that we looked at earlier. Just want to make sure that you have access to this and you're aware that there's a lot of amazing tools available to you, okay? So working with your characters, icons, all this stuff might be a little kind of hiding in kind of plain sight. So just make sure you check those out. Now, in addition to that, notice you can also go to characters this way as well, and it pretty much takes you to the same place. And again, understand kind of why we'd want to use characters. It's a nice little narrator to kind of take us through to take over the role of somebody who's going to be teaching it. Very good. Explore that, have fun with it, be creative, and we'll see you in the next lesson. And welcome back, everybody. We're going to switch up gears a little bit and talk about shapes. Shapes are really everywhere, and they have a variety of different purposes all throughout your project. So looking at our Alliance file here, you're going to see that we have 6, 7, 8 shapes here, and maybe even some shapes behind here that are also framing our content. So they're kind of like text boxes, but in fact, they're actually individual shapes. So if we look at our timeline, you can see here it says smart shape, smart shape, smart shape, right? And those are telling us that these are in fact shapes. Let's come over to here. You can see these are going to be also shape, shape, shapes. Okay. Now there's a variety of different types of shapes that we can do. So if you click on shapes up here up on top, you can see we can do shapes for a variety of different purposes and intentions around arrows, right? Maybe you want to actually have some kind of actions like playing things for videos. Maybe you just want to make it as a nice banner. Potentially you're going to do like math and things like that. Or maybe it's just a simple line. And also potentially you might be doing things like callouts, making your characters kind of speak to you. So let's just do kind of a basic shape here on slide 13. And you can see I can barely see all this text here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out a shape that's going to be behind this text to kind of frame it and then give it a little bit of a backdrop. So very simply, I'm going to go over here to shapes and I'm just going to draw out a rectangle and just simply click and drag. And you're going to see, what happens here? Number one, white is good. I want that. But of course, I can't see my content here. So if we come over here to our timeline, we're going to see we can now adjust the layering of this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just simply drag this down and you'll see, okay, it's getting better. Drag it down some more. Okay, that's better. And then maybe one more. Oops, nope, can't see it. That's too far. So what I'd like to do is actually name this so I know exactly what it is. So I go over to here to my properties panel and I'm just going to go ahead and say title white BG for background. So now I know exactly what it is here. And you have this one here and that's okay, that's actually title auto shape. That's another thing. Well, you know what? This actually should say exactly what it is. So image slide txt. Okay, great. So now I know what that is. Labeling and all that stuff for organizing is very, very important and very valuable. Okay, so let's come back to this title white background. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. Now, if you want to change the color, if you want to change the look and feel of it, you want to change even the shape itself, we're going to go over to here to our properties panel to make those changes. So I want you to notice that I have this little kind of lower section down here. Okay, that tells us all kinds of different shape styles that are available to us. First thing you'll notice is here's the shape I'm working with, but if I click on this drop down, notice I have different types of other shapes I have available to me. As an example, let's try this one, a rounded rectangle. Oh, let's click away from that and say, oh, you know what? I kind of like that a little better. When I click back on it again, you'll notice that I'm going to actually, just to be safe, let's go ahead and just go right to here. You'll notice that I actually have this little yellow icon there, right? That allows me to adjust what's known as my corner radius. Okay, so I'm going to go right there, make sure I'm not selecting it. Okay, so this is actually going to be a good lesson on, guess what? Timeline management, because this thing keeps getting in the way. And I love when this happens, because then I can teach you something else that is going to be very realistic. So notice here is my image slide text. It keeps getting in the way. So what I'm going to do is lock it. Okay, so therefore this will be less of a nuisance getting in the way, because now when I click and drag on this, see, I can't accidentally click on it, and I'm also going to make it so it's hidden, so it's not there at all. Now I can go to exactly where I want it to be, and then bam, now I have a little bit more of a kind of a subtle corner radius there. Then I can very easily bring these back, right? No problem. So I locked it and I also hid it. We'll do a little bit more on working with timelines in an upcoming lesson. All right, so that's pretty cool. So I have that. But then I decide, you know what, I'd actually like to do a little bit more with this. All right, so right now, my shape has a solid fill. Notice you have other options too. You can make it a gradient fill if you want to. You could also fill it in with a picture if you want to. Okay, we're going to keep it for right now as a solid fill. Then I'm going to come over to here to say, hey, listen, what color do I want it to be? Okay, so you know what? I think I'm going to keep it at white, but just so we can see what it might do, just very easily, I can then pick and choose any of these colors. And let's say, for example, I want to actually match it perfectly to, let's say, this woman's top here. So I can go ahead and click on that and then click on my little eyedropper and then go ahead and grab it. Just say, bam, that's the color I want. Some of you may actually want to put in your own RGB value or your hexadecimal code, and you do have the option for doing that as well. So if you know what that is, your designers are coming in and say, listen, we have to use our brand colors, you can very easily type any of those things in here, right? So if I change this to that color, right, and I'll make that to this, okay, very good. Now we have exactly what we want, okay, and then I would click OK. All right, but I'm gonna go ahead and just keep it maybe at that. I do like that one. Okay, now we also have the option for opacity. Opacity just basically means how much can we see through it. So it's a nice kind of visual interest little trick to maybe make something a little bit less opaque, right? So then I can do like something like that. It's like, ah, that's nice. It's very elegant, kind of gives some realism to it, some depth, right? Kind of gives it some visual interest. Now let me just go ahead and make this not so big. So not much space there. Okay, I like that. I'm gonna use my arrow keys to bump that down. All right, and we're kind of on our way to something pretty nice. Now let's come back and select this and continue on with some other options here. Strokes. In Adobe speak, a stroke is just an outline. So if I want to have an outline around something, I can very easily do that. Okay, so let's try that here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say, what kind of style do I want? I just want a solid line. You can do several different other types if you want to. So I'll just go ahead and try this with red, and then I'm gonna make my width like that. It's not what I want, but I want you to see what options we have, because sometimes this is something you want it to kind of stand out in kind of a unique way. You would make it do that. Let's come back over here to a solid line, and now it's gonna be red and a width of 5 points, right? So let's just come back. I'm gonna do something kind of subtle. I'll do gray, and I'm gonna make that maybe come down to 3. And then you can see it has a nice little bit of texture, but it doesn't kind of dominate the screen. All right, let's come back to that one more time. We don't need to do another lesson on this, but you do have the option for shadow and reflection. And recall, you can do inner shadow, outer shadow, right? You can change the color and the blur and the angle and all that good stuff, right? So you can review an old lesson that I did prior to this on all these different options here, okay? And then don't forget, you also have the option to apply to all of items of that same type. So pretty neat, all right? So drawing out our shapes, okay, and then reordering the shapes within our timeline. And then if you want to change the shape to a different type, you can very easily do that, okay? So you can see, and I haven't shown you all the options, but just note that these are available to you, all right? So really nice to be able to do that. Change the different types of fill colors, your opacity, adding on a stroke, potentially working with some different types of reflections as well. So let's just go ahead and go maybe to another one here. And let me just go ahead and click on that one. And you'll notice here is just says Smart Shape. And let's just continue on here. Okay, so this is going to be 01 background. Okay, and then they don't want us to actually have it start off with a number. So that's fine. I'll say BG01. Okay, great. And what do I want this to do? You know, it's gonna be a little bit of a different style here. So this time, I'm gonna show you how we can work with a gradient. Click on that, and you're gonna see what happens now, right? I now have what's called a gradient. A gradient is not gonna be a solid color or an image fill. It's gonna be something that kind of flows from one color to the other. In this case, it's flowing from white to gray to black, okay? So if we click on this now, you're going to see inside of my fill color options, I have all kinds of different preset gradient options, okay, including the gradient that I've just chosen right now, which is just black to white. And if I choose this one, you'll see, okay, that's kind of nice, kind of elegant. And you'll see how that changes down below as well. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and maybe choose this red one. Now you'll notice that I have these two things here called gradient stops. Gradient stops. So basically it's going from this kind of, you know, reddish color, right? Reddish kind of white, all the way to this darker red. I could very easily change that if I wanted to. So I'll go ahead and just click on that. And then I'll just change this now to a blue. I didn't want that one, so I'm just going to remove that. And you can see what that's going to do, right? Let's go ahead and do that one more time. Let's do kind of a darker red, all right? Or a kind of a brighter red, I should say. All right, and this will maybe be even darker, kind of a burgundy color. All right, and maybe that's the look you're looking for. Now with gradients, you have a few options here. All right, if you notice this guy right here, this is going to allow you to reverse your gradient. So if you wanted to do that, you can very easily reverse it. So the red's going to be on the bottom and the whiteness is going to be on the top, or vice versa. And you could also do something kind of fun, which is change the gradient type entirely. Currently, we're working with what's called a linear gradient. This is going to be a radial gradient. And you can see what that does. Let's reverse that. What are you looking for? Okay. For what we're looking at here, probably not the best option here. But if you play around with some of these, you can see how it can be a little bit more subtle, kind of draw your user's attention and their eyes into kind of the center of something. Okay. So kind of nice. You can try maybe that. So you kind of want to use these things with intention, right? So now my kind of lightness is around the number 1. So it's like, okay, it's very subtle. I really like that. So, and then maybe you would repeat that over and over and over again, okay? So keeping that in mind, how different kind of shape options you can do, all right? Now, let's just do maybe one more just for fun. Let's just bring in another one of our characters, and I'm gonna have them kind of speaking something, right? Because maybe, earlier we were talking about safety or whatever. Then you're going to say, okay, now we're going to be doing a call center training. So you're going to have somebody, i.e. one of our characters, now start speaking to them. So where am I going to find them? Under media, you can go over here to characters. And now we'll wait for it. And let's just find somebody. Okay, so who's going to be our speaker? All right, let's just find this guy this time. All right, let's just take a look at some of our illustrated characters. All right, we can see here, we got them doing this. He's talking about that. He's pointing at this, okay? Really explore what else is going on here. What else can this person be doing? Okay, great. So welcome, all right? So I'm gonna click on that. Notice other options here. You can have them just be half, full, just a close-up, okay? And then I'm gonna say insert, wait for it to download, and there you have them. And let's just go ahead and have him get resized a little bit and hold down your shift key, as I did not do the first time, and that's why he came in a little warped. And now, let's go and zoom out a little bit so we can see where he's going to be. And what I'm going to do is now insert a new type of shape that's going to give the illusion of him actually speaking, right? So there we have it. I'm going to draw out his little thought bubble, and thought bubble has the ability to change the direction of where your little tail is coming from. So there he is, he's speaking, and I'm going to say, welcome to the call center training. Okay, these little call outs are by default text boxes. So all you got to do is simply double click on it and it becomes a text box. Pretty cool. Now, if I want this to be a slightly different type of thought bubble, I can come over to here and make my changes, and look at that. Maybe I want it to be something like this. And of course, it kind of resets itself. So let's be patient. Okay, and forgiving. Let's come back over to here, and there he is. Okay, maybe you like that one better. And then I'm going to go here and highlight my text, come over there, and now let's make this bigger like we did earlier. And then maybe you want to change the font to something else completely different. You can absolutely do that. Good, I like it. And let's make that 45. And we are on our way. Excellent, love it. Okay, so you can see all the options that are available within our shapes for thought bubbles, as well as regular shapes, are available to us here as well. Or if I wanted to change the color of this, if I wanted to do a gradient, if I wanted to bring the opacity down, or whatever it is, add on a stroke, I can absolutely do that. So lots of options with shapes, and definitely a lot of purposes, right? Like a lot of application for shapes. Shapes are here. Shapes are here. You can see this is a nice creative way of doing shapes for bullets, right? Here's more shapes for framing text. Okay, and what we're going to do in upcoming lessons is we're also going to use shapes for creating buttons to make your project a little bit more interactive. Okay, so practice this, and we'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to talk about buttons, creating buttons, manipulating buttons, and making them interactive, giving them actions. Now, I want to talk about a few of the different ways that Captivate sort of sets you up to do buttons, and to kind of warn you against them, sorry to say, but the ways that they actually have you kind of set up to do buttons kind of by default are not really the best ways. I'm going to show you kind of like the wrong way to do it, and I'm going to show you the best way that I can recommend you do it. Because you're going to have a lot more flexibility, more stability, and also more kind of design options. So if I go over to here to, for example, interactions, and I choose button, all right, you're going to notice this kind of button that appears here. Okay, and if you look over to here inside of my properties panel, you're going to see how it says text button. Now, if I click on this drop down, you're going to see I can do a text button, I can do a transparent button, all right, it does that, and I can make it an image button. Okay, and then they give me all of these kind of like very, in my opinion, dated options here. Okay, certainly you might want to use these. Okay, it's totally up to you, right? But let me just come back to my text button, and you can see, okay, that's great, and I can certainly change the text. I can do all this stuff here. I can go to my transparent button, and you can see, oh, a few more options here. It gives me the option to change the fill color and do all this other stuff here. I'm going to delete this because that is not the option I want to go into. I want you to see another way you can do buttons that might give you a few more options, but still a little limited, but totally up to you. This may be the choice you want to go to. And that again comes over here to Media for us, Asset Library, and then notice over here we have a section called Buttons. And there's quite a few to work with, right? Maybe you just want to do some basic shapes. Pretty nice, right? Here's start, continue, and then also just take a look at some of these. Now, the caveat around this is that they are just images, okay? So you're stuck with the wording that's in here, okay? The graphic styles and the quality will be pretty good, right? But you can't change the words. So I'm just gonna go over here to start. I'm going to say insert, and then this is going to come in, and I can resize this, and then, oh, that looks a little weird. Okay, you know what? Let me just undo that. Let's come over here from the corners. Okay, good. It's not so bad. But if I wanted this to say begin, like this one, I can't do it, right? See, it's not flexible in that way. All right, so I'm going to kind of run into some challenges with this because this, in fact, is just an image, right? Whereas this one, right, you can see this is actually going to give us the ability to work with it maybe a little bit better, a little more flexibility. Where am I leading with all this? I'm going to suggest you actually use shapes, right? We just did a lesson on shapes. You're going to use shapes and you're going to convert your shapes into buttons. Earlier, we learned how to do a variety of different shapes in terms of rounded rectangles or, all kinds of other things with colors and gradients and all that stuff. And we're going to make it into a button so it, in fact, has an action and is interactive. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one. All right, and again, I just want to say you might choose the way you want to do it, so it's totally up to you. The process I'm going to show you how to create it might be a little different, but applying all the actions will be the same for whatever choice you ultimately end up with. Let's go ahead now. I'm going to go over here to shapes. All right, and this time I'm going to choose, for example, this one right here, rounded rectangle. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag just like that. And then remember, I have this option here. Let's just say I want to do kind of like something a little more of a capsule. All right, and if you recall, I can very simply just double click on it, and I'm just going to say begin. I click away, and I have a shape right now. I do not have a button, okay? Because if I were to preview this right now, okay, we'll go to preview, and we'll just say preview next 5 slides. Wait for this to pop up. I want you to notice now that this is a button, this is not. See when I mouse over it? This is a button, this is not. Okay, when I click on begin, that works. What I need to do is make this into a button. So very simple. All I do now is come over to here to this option that says use as button with this selected. Now I choose that, and then a lot of things change, whether you realize it or not. It's all kind of happening in the background, right? This is actually a button that is running something, right? But what's the major thing that's changing is this ability to do actions. That was not there prior to me making this into a button. So what is the action I want? The action is to go to the next slide. All right, now what we're going to do is explore all of these action options that are available to me now. Okay, this has now been converted into a button. So on success, go to next slide. On success, send an email. On success, play audio, right? It's all kinds of different things that you can do here. Scroll down. It's like, okay, this button is very interactive and it's designed to trigger some type of action, bring something up potentially. Maybe you're going to make a table of contents and you want it to go to the welcome slide. You can do that as well, right? As you can see here, jump to a particular slide and you click on that and you're going to see all your slide choices will then appear. Look at that. Now you can see, well, that's why we named all of our slides one of our first lessons to do that. So I just wanted to go to the next slide. So super easy, scroll all the way to the top, go to the next slide, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one. Say, okay, bring this guy back over to here and notice how it all comes together as one big group. Now let's come back to styles. And I want you to notice that currently my fill is just this plain old white. Because this is a shape and a button all at once, I have all the same options as I did in the previous lesson to then customize the style, the look and feel of this, right? So if I want to do a nice little gradient, I can do that. Let's come over to here and let's just do a nice little subtle kind of green situation there. Maybe I'll play around with it some more. Okay, I really like that. I can also put a little stroke around it as well. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do like a nice little light gray stroke. That's maybe 1 point. Okay, very, very subtle. Okay, it's there. You know, your eyes can, your soul can sort of see it, but it just kind of looks like a little bit of some texture to it. That's wonderful. Now, if I preview this, next 5 slides, remember you can always do F10. This is now a button, okay? But you'll notice that I can't tell it's a button right now. It's a button, but why can't I tell it's a button? Because I didn't get any feedback from it. So that's gonna be the next thing that we do. What is the feedback I want? I want it to actually change in my actions. I'm gonna make it change into a hand cursor. Okay, do you see that? All right, so now that that's a hand cursor, let's do that one more time. I'm gonna do F10 this time. So I'm a hot shot with my hotkeys. And now, move your mouse over it, and you see that? Now it becomes interactive to show me, in fact, that this is a button. I click on it, and it works. That's wonderful. Next thing we're gonna do is make it so when you mouse over it, it changes colors, okay? What do I mean by change colors? In Captivate speak, it's going to change colors based on what state you are in. If we go over to here to our properties panel, you're gonna see here there's something called the state view. Okay, so just like how we went to our slide master different view, we're now gonna go over here to our different state views. So I go to state view, and now just wait for it. You're gonna see things change kind of dramatically, right? If you look over here on the left-hand side, I have my normal view, my rollover view, I kind of like that, and then my down view. So let's just go ahead and now plug this in. I click on that, and what color do I want that to be when somebody mouses over it? So let's find it. Let's go over to here, and let's just do a different kind of fill color. Let's maybe just do, I don't know, let's do this pretty blue color. It's nice. And then when somebody clicks on it, let's make it kind of a little darker, okay? Kind of get that feedback. All right, so bam, state 1, which is normal, bam, this is when they mouse over it, and then bam, when they click on it, okay? We're going to get that color, all right? So we need to exit out of this state view by going over here to exit state. Now, let's preview it, F10, just for the next 5 slides. And wait for it. Look at that. Beauty, beauty, beauty. Click on it and see, now it's dark. And I let go, and there you have it. Okay, so buttons are super easy to work with and super fun, really. You know, so it's like you're making it interactive. You're allowing people to go from one thing to the other. Okay, so really, really easy to do. Okay, so another example might be you just wanting to make something go into, you know, a link to something else, right? So working with hyperlinks, right, is a whole different animal altogether. So we're going to do a lesson on that upcoming, all right? But if it's just words you want to do to say, hey, listen, email us, you can do that just the same. So practice that, and remember, creating shapes to make buttons is going to be the most flexible and scalable way to actually do buttons rather than the off-the-shelf types of buttons that Captivate gives you. All right, so practice that, explore what some of the options are. Remember to make it into a little hand, right? So when you click on it, and then you are ready to rock and roll. Okay, and we'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to talk about working with hyperlinks. So with hyperlinks, you can link up to different websites. You can link up to emails. You basically want people to interact. But what we're going to do more specifically is work with links on text. So if I want something on every single slide, right, I don't want to have to do it on every single slide to say, hey, listen, contact us, bam, bam, bam. I would do it, of course, within my master slide view. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. But the process is going to be the same no matter what, if you want it on the front end or on the back end. All right. So just kind of keeping that in mind. This is going to be kind of a double lesson to kind of remind you of another way you can possibly use your slide master view. How do I get there? I'm going to go over to here to my master slide view, and I'm going to come over to here to my top headmaster here. All right. And I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to put it. So I'm going to have to maybe experiment a little bit because I have different colors all over the place. And of course, if you don't want it on every single slide across the board, you can maybe put it on certain layouts, right? However you want to do that. All right. But for right now, let's just get the practice and let's just see how we can actually create links. So I'm going to go ahead and just go over here to text and choose text caption. This is going to pop up here. And I'm just going to start typing out www.learnit.com. All right, and I'm just going to do a little bar, which is over there right underneath the backspace key. All right, and I'm going to say info@learnit.com. Click away. It's obviously not big enough. Let's bring that over there. And now let's maybe move this over here in the upper left. They might look like they're clickable, but in fact, they're not. We need to make these into clickable items, i.e. hyperlinks. So I'm just going to go ahead and just double click, highlight my content. And there's not a whole lot of options here for me to look at that's very obvious where it says hyperlink. But guess what? If I come over to here, you're going to see there's this option that says hyperlink, insert hyperlink. I click on that. And again, remembering to select what you want to actually make into a hyperlink. You'll notice it says link to what? Web page. Oh, well, I want to make it go to www.learnit.com and simply click OK. And now you'll notice how it changes, right? It kind of looks like a link. Okay, you can see it's great. That's what I wanted to do. All right, if I wanted to change that color, that is, I can very easily change that too. That's just kind of what they're automatically giving me. All right, now let's do an email. I'm going to highlight this, and this time I'm going to right click and say insert hyperlink. Maybe that's another way you want to do it. Okay, so two ways you can do it. Go to this craziness over here, that link, or if you like right clicking, you can right click and say insert hyperlink. And guess what? Holy cow, a ton of options appear here. Open a file, send email to somebody, go directly to a slide, right? If you're working with some other advanced things, you can do that as well. Okay, so just like how we saw earlier with buttons, we have a lot of interactive types of options for us here. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and say send email to, okay, and then info@learnit.com and click OK and click away. For right now, I'm pretty happy with where this is, right? But again, this is just for us to practice. Now I'm going to go over here and say exit master. Say, okay, pretty cool. There it is. There it is. Maybe the color's not the best, right? Now, for some of you, you may run into the fact that you're not seeing it. Why am I seeing it and why are you not seeing it when you practice this? I'll tell you exactly why. Come over to here where it says master slide objects on top. I want you to click that if it's not selected, because guess what? We're now making that appear on top for every single slide to see. All right, and then if I were to preview this, you'll see that this is in fact not only visible, but it is clickable and interactive. So now I'm gonna hit play and then notice, there it is, that's clickable. Click on that and then lo and behold, there it is. It takes me right to the Learnit website. Fantastic. Let's get out of that, come back to here, and you're gonna see when I go from one page to the other, amazing, so cool, so slick, and very important to kind of add that type of interactivity to your slideshow and to your projects and to your lessons, okay? And again, you can make it interactive in any way you want to, right? So let's just say you have some content here and you want to say, hey, you know what? For review, go back to slide number 2. You can very easily do that, okay? So let's just go ahead and do that, right? So I'll just say review course overview here, okay? And let's just say our course overview is on slide number 1, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and highlight the word here, right click, say insert hyperlink, and guess what? Let's choose slide this time. And then which slide do I want? I'm going to go back to Start Course, and there it is. Click away. And of course, like I said, you can change that if you want it to look a little bit differently. You can do that over there. And let's just check it out. Let's watch it in action. So I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to hit begin. Go to the next slide. And oh, I want to review that first one. Hey, look at that. Takes me right back here. So many choices you have for interactivity. All right. So it's really up to you what your plan is. So as you're kind of storyboarding, these are the kind of things that will really help you out to know what's even available for you. Okay. So pause the video, practice that, and hopefully by now you're actually working on something real, and this may help you to start being a little more interactive with whatever kind of projects you're working on. Let's continue this discussion about hyperlinks, but more specifically talking about images. So if we click on an image right here inside of our Landon Hotels document, you will notice that if I right click, I don't see an option for making this into a hyperlink like I did with text. If I look over here, I don't see an option either, right, within my properties for my linking like I did with my text. So what do? Just like what we've done with our shapes, we can actually make this into a button. So what we need to do is simply say use as button, and then take a look at these tabs here. As soon as I click on that, I now get a third tab that says actions. And what does the action imply? When somebody clicks on it, what do you want them to do, right? So you can see here, I can say go to the next slide, open up a URL, right? Play audio, whatever you want to do here, right? So very, very simple and also very thorough. What would you like it to do? So I'm going to go ahead and just say open URL, and then we'll just go ahead and do learnit.com, and bam, there you have it. Let's go ahead and test it out. Actually, before I do that, let's actually make this so it's going to be a hand cursor, so it really looks like one. Okay, that it actually is a link, so we can reinforce that to the viewer and user. Let's go ahead and view our next 5 slides and wait for it. And now when I mouse over it, you see, bam, it has that. I click on it and it's going to take us to our favorite website in the world, learnit.com. So pretty straightforward, all right? But it's not straightforward until you actually know how to do it, but it's not consistent with other parts of Captivate. So just wanted to make that clear. There might be other times when you might want to do a kind of a slightly more kind of nuanced way of clicking, right? So you might want to say, hey, listen, here's like a map of something, right? And you want to kind of have people kind of click on something and then something takes you someplace else, click on another part of that same image and have it go someplace else. What that is called is simply a click box, all right? So if I choose that, I want you to notice that a bunch of stuff pops up here. There's a click box and there's all kinds of different like success messages and failure messages and things like that. So what I'm going to first do is, okay, I want this little lamp here, which has some kind of historical significance to actually, like when somebody clicks on it, something happens, right? Bam, okay, great. But it's going to be potentially invisible, right? Because I want people to just click on it. I want it to be super obvious, okay? And then here's my action. Very good. What's going to have happen? They're going to go to whatever, open a URL, etc., whatever you want to have happen. This time, let's go to hotels.com. What happens when you bring in a click box is you get all these options for success, failure, and hint and all that stuff, which I do not want. So I'm going to actually remove all those. So I just uncheck those. Now, the part that we haven't really spoken about so much in terms of buttons is this right here, pause project until user clicks. Now, if you take a look at the timeline, right, if we come down here a little bit, you see where I am right down there. You're going to see that there's like a little kind of a pause icon. That's telling me that, in fact, that the user will not actually go past the end of this particular slide to go to the next slide until there is some kind of click action happening. All right, but notice it's happening at the end, which is really nice. We want to see that. If you look at the timing, I choose this. You can see here it also has some other information about how long this is going to be up there. Whenever you're working with buttons, keep an eye on this, right? You'll be able to actually say, hey, listen, this is going to pause the whole video, the whole presentation until somebody actually clicks on it. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and do another click box, and let's just do it now on this lamp right here. I'm going to go to Interactions, click box, take a look at it down here. And you might want to start to label some things here because we're now going to have 2 click boxes and that could get a little bit confusing. So let's just go ahead and call this click box right lamp. and this will be click box left lamp. All right, and let's just bring this on top just so where there's no confusion about where things are. And I'm just going to drag that over here. Great, I can resize this however I want to. All right, and I think everything looks pretty good. Okay, so what do I want it to do? Let's have this one go someplace else. And maybe I'm gonna have it actually open up to another document if you wanted to. You wanna learn a little bit more about something, you can absolutely do that, right? So let me go ahead and get to another document. And we see when I click on it, something's gonna pop up. Okay, and there you have it. Someone's gonna open up a file this time. All right, and then notice I have no success or failure or anything else, right? I'm gonna say, yes, I want the hand cursor, and then yes, it is actually going to pause for me as well, right? So make sure people can't go any further after that. Okay, let's go ahead and clean all this up here a little bit more so we're just nice airtight. All right, so let's check it out. F10 to preview it. And there it is, comes up here, it pauses, and then move my mouse over this, get a little hand, and then bam, there's a little hand. So let's go ahead and see this time with a file. I click on that, and look at that, lo and behold, there it is. I have a nice PDF connected to that. And I can always go back here. And then if I'm actually looking at this live, there it will be. Okay. Wonderful. Good. And there was hotels.com. Okay. So everything's working great. All right. So keep in mind some other things that you may want to do. If you click on this little drop down, you can actually set it so it's going to be another tab if you want to, so it doesn't override that. So you can choose that as new or top. So it'll open up as a new tab. Just part 2 of our hyperlinks, lots of different ways you can do it. Actually making something into a button, meaning an image, not just shapes, and also doing parts of an image. You can kind of break it apart to be able to have individual parts of an image to be clickable. And of course, you might want to actually label it to say, hey, click on the lamp to do this and that, click on this lamp to do this and that, so people know what to do. All right, so pause the video, practice that, and we'll see you in the next lesson. We are going to switch up gears a little bit now and talk about the timeline in a little more detail. So far, we have discussed the timeline in kind of the basics, right? Just talking about how we can rename our different layers here, right? As you can see, we have this content here, but it's just called Smart Shape, right? But I don't want it to be called that. So we have to go to our timeline, and I'm going to say, right, I'll just say bullet 1. Great, so I know what that is, right? Let's go over to here. That's going to be bullet 2, right? But of course, maybe I want to be a little more clear. Bullet 2 TXT. Okay, yeah, that actually might be better. So let's come back to here, rename that TXT. Why? Because I also have some numbers there as well. So I might want to say, you know, what each of these individual things are as we move forward. Okay, so that's going to be a little review on your first little bit about how we work with the timeline. We also discussed how we can make things visible or invisible. All right, so this image right here is kind of getting in the way and it's a bit of a problem, but I also don't even really know what I'm looking at here, right? So sometimes it's a good idea to kind of use these little eyeballs here or the lock icon there to kind of make it easier for you to interface with your slide deck, right? So if I click on this little, oh, that's what I'm looking at here. The eyeball makes it kind of disappear for a second, so I know what I'm looking at here. So okay, that is the right one. So let's rename this, all right? And I'm just gonna call this Speaker IMG. So now I know exactly what that is, all right? Love that. So, and if I don't wanna click on it by accident, I can always lock it, okay? So just a few lessons ago, we discussed that when something was in the way when we were clicking on a shape. One of the first lessons we talked about was how to preview the slide without actually having to actually open it up into the player itself. So if I hit the space bar now, notice how my little scrubber, my little playhead kind of goes through here. What this is telling me right now is that this slide is only 3 seconds long, right? And you can see watch it going through right there. Now, if you look down on the bottom, it also tells me this slide is 3 seconds long. And you can see here how each and every one of these layers is also taking up the entire timeline. Earlier, we also talked about the properties panel. The properties panel is broken down into, in this case, 2 different kind of like heading tabs. One is the properties, one is the timing, and you'll be able to see a whole bunch of different options, right, kind of built into here, right? So if I were to go ahead and click down here for summary or click nowhere, it tells me that this entire slide is 3 seconds. It also gives me the option to potentially transition into this slide. Okay, so if I want to do something like that, I can very easily just make a little fade into that. Okay, so kind of nice. Okay, but now, why am I seeing just the timing of 3 seconds? Because again, I've clicked on nothing. If I'm more concerned about, let's just say the timing, like when this comes up, or like how long it stays up and all that stuff here, then I need to click on the object itself, and then you can see some separate options here, right? That this is the timing for this particular object, okay? This is the timing for this particular object, all right? So what we're gonna do now is we're going to now kind of play around with this particular slide, where I want things to kind of come in one by one by one. Okay, so we just have some generic text here just for purposes of the exercise. So, but let's just now just do this particular slide. I'm going to say right now that from this slide, next 5 slides, and it's going to appear, and it fades in because of my transition, and then it just kind of goes away. Not really what I want. Okay, so I'm going to kind of play around with this a little bit more here. Okay, so you're going to want to first of all just start working with your layers and the naming. Okay, so I'm just going to say bullet 5 txt. Come over to here, I can select directly on there. This is going to be bullet 4 txt, bullet 3 txt. Very good. All right, and then we'll just keep these where they are right now, just for our exercise here, but we may actually want to group them for what we're going to do next. All right, so here's my bullet 1, all right, and I want that to come in first, and I also want it to stay up a little longer. So there's 2 ways for me to make it so say, hey, listen, this needs to stay for more than 3 seconds. The whole thing needs to stay more than 3 seconds. So 2 ways I can do this. First of all, make the slide be longer. So everything else that I want to do in terms of making all of this longer is I need to actually make the slide be longer. So the whole slide, let's just say this is going to be 15 seconds. Okay. And then guess what? Everything else comes in and follows suit. But this is all good and it's nice. However, I don't want them to all come up at the same time. All right. So but let's just take a look at this. Let's just see what happened here. If I go over to here to bullet number 1, you'll see that this is now going to be this entire 15 seconds here, right? It goes up for the entire thing because this is going to display for the rest of the slide. All right, and then bullet 2, same thing, but it's coming in the beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, listen, you know what? Let's have you appear after about, just say 2 seconds. And look at what it does there. Okay, let's go ahead and do bullet 3 this time. But this time I'm going to do it in a slightly different way by going directly to the timeline. And that's by just going right to here, look for this double-sided arrow, and I'm going to have this come up at 4 seconds. And if you take a look here, it automatically updates here. All right, let's go over here to bullet 4, and let's have this come up after 6 seconds, bullet 5, and that's going to be 8 seconds. All right, and now you can watch it. I'm going to hit the space bar. That comes up, that comes up, that comes up, and so on, and so on. All right, and then we give them enough time to actually read it. Let's actually preview that. I'm going to do F10. Let's play it. Number 1's automatically there. Blah, 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 da-da-da. Very cool. All right, so let's just do maybe a little bit more here. All right, I'm going to have this come up just a little bit later, actually. So the slide's up. It's going to take maybe about 1 second for this to pop up. And then if I scroll down here, I want you to notice there's something called transition, right? What is the transition for? It's just for this item right here. Okay, so what does that mean, right? As opposed to the whole slide, which I transitioned, it's just for this object. I wanted to fade in only. All right, and for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and just select all of these, right? Hold down Shift, 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 and then transition, fade in only, and it does it for all of them now. Actually, I mean to do 5 as well. All right, let's scroll down, and let's just say fade it only, and that's going to be a nice little elegant way to bring your stuff in. Just keep in mind, some of you may be looking at this, we're going to be doing this in another lesson altogether, right? So stay tuned for working with some of these other timing properties when we get into some of more advanced classes. All right, so let's go ahead and just take a look at it. There's going to be a little delay for slide 1 now, or excuse me, for bullet 1, but it is going to transition in nicely, and then one by one, each of those bullets will come in. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, I like that. I like that. So we worked with the timing to be able to do that. Okay, so we're able to adjust when it was coming in, how long it was going to stay, and also we did a little bit more with our timing and our transitions to play with those as well. So pretty slick. Just to understand how the timeline works as well, let's do something with this picture, because I'm not a fan of the fact that this picture is covering up all of this. Some of you might like that, totally up to you, but I'm going to change that. So how can I change it is by simply just dragging this up above it, right? If you try to drag this, it won't work, okay? This part won't work. You actually have to go directly to this little kind of timeline part and then just drag it up, drag it up, drag it up. And now look at that, no more issue, because all of these are essentially underneath this picture, right? You can see, in fact, this is the top, right? Speaker image is on top. So therefore, all of these are now hidden underneath it. Okay, so one more time, F10. And now, one by one, there we go. I like that. Very slick. Nice creative way to bring in your content, more than just plain bullets, working with shapes, working with our timeline, working with transitions, okay? And in this case, also working with layering, all right? So definitely something you wanna practice and incorporate into all of your content. So there's really a lot you can do with timing within the timeline. All right, now just a few other things on the timeline itself, which is on the bottom. I'm going to start with this little kind of zoom option right there. If you bring this all the way to the left, this is really good to just kind of crunch all of your timeline options together into one view, especially if you have really, really long ones, right? If your one slide is like, a minute or so and you want to see them all together, this is actually really nice to be able to kind of see it all and then to be able to interact with it if you want to, right? And you can even push this out further if you want to, and that affects the whole slide. Okay, good. That's nice and easy to be able to do that, where you wouldn't be able to do that otherwise because it's so far off the screen there. All right, down below, starting on the left-hand side, some things may look familiar to you. If you want to move the playhead all the way to the beginning, it starts at the beginning now. Okay, if you want to move it all the way to the end, notice your little scrubber playhead is way at the end there. All right, here is your option to play, right? So go ahead and play it. And we know the shortcut key for that, which is just space bar. So the space bar will play and pause, does the same thing. This one over here is just going to be about your sound. If you don't want to hear the sound because you keep hearing it over and over again, you can go ahead and just pause that. We haven't actually worked on sound quite yet, but we will soon enough. All right, and then these are going to be kind of like different elements of time. Okay, so if we click on this layer, you can see, right, the elapsed time of where this is now, right, 10 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever it is, you can see that change. Okay, this one is telling me, okay, so when does this selected layer begin? At 0 seconds. How about bullet 5? Bullet 5 starts at 8 seconds. This is going to start at 6 seconds. When is this going to be important to you? Let's say you're working with, your voice talent, and your voice talent says, well, when do I speak? Well, bullet 5 comes up at exactly 8 seconds. How did you know that? Because you can see here it says 8 seconds, right? You don't have to kind of squint your eyes and look here. You can see it right there, which is really nice, right? Again, gives you some good information for, when things are happening in a kind of more precise manner, all right? This is going to be the selected duration. What does that mean? How long is this going to stay up? So you might ask yourself, is 7.2 seconds enough time for them to read bullet 5? You might say, yeah, that's fine. Or maybe, you know what, maybe we should bring it in a little sooner, right? So then they have 9 seconds to read it. And then maybe you're going to adjust everything else accordingly. Timeline really gives you that kind of like finesse. And then finally, you can see here, this is how long the entire slide duration is. And if the timeline's getting in the way, remember, you can just simply double click on it and then it collapses, single click on it, and it brings it back. And if you don't see it there at all, remember, click on Window, and you can see there is Timeline. window, timeline. Really great. You can use the timeline to do a variety of different things. Number one, name the layers themselves. To hide the layers if you want to. You can lock the layers, okay? And you can also change the order of the layers, okay? Just like I did with my image to bring this up higher. And of course, you can play with the timing right here with our double-sided arrows. You can play with the timing within the timing tab, okay? And you can also play around with the transitions and zooming in and out. So there's really quite a bit you can do. And now you see, now that we're done with this slide, that it actually looks a lot better as a result of all the tinkering we've done with our timeline. Okay, we'll see you in the next lesson. And please, please, please practice this up and get comfortable with everything you can do on the timeline. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to do a software simulation. Okay, so Captivate has this amazing tool that allows you to record your screen and record each of the steps that you take with all of your mouse movements and clicks, and then create captions automatically and the mouse movements that are respective to all of the actions that you have taken. Okay, so let me go ahead and just demonstrate this for you first of all. First thing we're going to do is I have this open window here that has new, and I have this option for software simulation. Now, also note that you can say File, and you can say Record a New, and then here it is, Software Simulation. So either one will take you to the right place. So I click on that, and you're going to see something's going to pop up here. Okay, now this is what I'm going to record, and it just happens to remember the last thing I did. So you can ignore what's in the background because I really want you to focus mostly on what's in this little box here, because yours is going to be different depending on what you're trying to record. So if I click on screen area right now, you'll notice it's going to give me the option to then record the screen area in any kind of size that I want to, right? Or you can say full screen depending on what you are trying to record. Okay, and then you should get a little red box that appears all around it. Okay, so if I just make this, let's just say 800 by 600, okay, you can see there is my box. I can move this around, and I say, listen, I'm only going to record this area. Maybe I'm going to resize that, and then bam, this is going to be your screen area that you are going to record. But in my case, I actually want to record the entire application. So you might have a Word file, you might have a Chrome, or Safari, or whatever you're trying to record. So it's just going to pick up whatever's inside the window of that application. Okay, so when I click on that, I want you to notice now I have all these options here, right? Notice here, you can see I'm recording, see how the sausage is made, and a few other things that are here as well, right? But I only want to record Photoshop, okay? So it's pretty great, it's just gonna be right there. Now, you have a few other options here. It says snap to what? Snap to the application window, right? So if something does appear, right, just bam, bring it right in. So if I'm gonna open up something in another monitor or something else, bam, it's gonna come right into here. It comes right to where it should be, so I'm not missing any of the recording, okay? And then same thing here as well. So if you wanted to do an application region, if you're making it a little smaller, you can do that. Here comes some more important bits down below. You can see here, it's asking me, what type of record am I going to be doing? Am I going to be doing a demo, an assessment, a training, or maybe it's kind of a jumble of all of those together? Now, you could combine all of them if you want to, right? So I won't go into much detail on this except for just to show you that you can in fact choose all three of these. Now, what's the difference here? Demo is going to give me a demonstration, right, of whatever I'm trying to do, right? Just pretty much what you'd expect it to do. It's going to record all of my movements and create captions on it and create mouse movements so my users can watch me do something with this Photoshop document. Fantastic, that's great. Also going to record it with the intention of an assessment, because basically the implication is that the user has already watched the demo, and now we would just want to kind of do a little quick assessment to see if they remember what we showed them. So it's a little assessment, right? Maybe you're going to grade it, maybe you're not going to grade it. We're going to talk about quizzes in another segment altogether, but this could be like a little mini quiz, right? The training is somewhere in the middle where you're going to give them a little bit of a hint as to like, hey, listen, you know what? You watched it. We don't want to necessarily assess you. We want to just kind of make sure that you're learning it. So you can have all these things, and guess what? When you do just one recording, all three of these then get churned out. It's so very cool. And it's asking me some other questions. Do you want to narrate this? So maybe I'm actually talking throughout all this and say, click on this, click on that, right? Do you want to narrate it? And I can turn on the system audio if I want to as well, right? So totally up to you if you want to do that. I am not going to narrate it because I'm just going to kind of let my sort of mouse movements do their thing. And then maybe after the fact, you're going to bring in audio. And again, we're going to be doing that in another lesson altogether. Now, before I hit record, I think it's very important we explore under the hood what our settings are. I know you're probably anxious just to go for it, but it is very important for us to understand what the settings are here. So I'm going to click on this, and this is going to take me into my Captivate settings. All right, now you'll notice here there is a recording section right here, and there is settings, video demo, different keyboard shortcuts, and our different modes for what those settings are going to be. We're going to start off with modes. What are the modes we're talking about? We just discussed those: demonstration, assessment, and training. Oh, okay. So they give us a bunch of different options for what you want to have happen during those modes, okay? So when I'm doing a recording, do you want to see text captions? Absolutely. Do you want to convert tooltips to rollover captions? Do you want to use smart shapes instead of captions? I'm not going to choose these. I'm going to do the default. You're going to see it in just a little bit. Okay, mouse movements. Absolutely, I want to show mouse movements. Absolutely, I want to have highlight boxes when I click. But look at these. These are all grayed out. Why are they grayed out? Because they have no business being active during a demonstration. Totally makes sense that click boxes on mouse click is not going to be available because the user is just watching. They're not clicking on anything. So we're not really assessing them or anything like that. But if I click over here to assessment, notice how this all gets lit up, but these get taken away because we're not doing any text captions, right? We're waiting for them to then click on some things, all right? So you can see just, you can study all these and pick and choose whichever ones you want. But notice how there's like failure captions here. If somebody doesn't click on the right thing during the assessment, there's going to be captions that show up and say, sorry, you got it wrong, try it again, or whatever. All right, and if we take a look at the training, not much different except for one extra thing, and that's going to be your hint captions, right? Because we are trying to train people, right? So we kind of want to give them a little bit of a hint. And you'll see all that in just a minute after we do our recording, all right? Now, if we go back over here to settings, you're going to see there's a number of different settings, relatively kind of spiced to taste and kind of intuitive, right? Here's again the option, do you want to have your narration? Yes or no? What language do you want it to be in? Do you want to record the actions in real time? Meaning that like instead of a kind of a robotic, nice fluid mouse movement, it's going to record me kind of like stuttering and kind of not doing things very perfectly. I probably don't want that, but there are times you do, right? Because maybe you're talking over it and you want a delay. So your mouse clicks and everything might be a little bit delayed. That's fine. Camera sounds and all these things, this is going to be when you actually do your recording, right? You're going to actually hear these camera sounds, right? Cha-ching, cha-ching, right? So it gives you that little feedback that you as the developer have actually captured that screen, okay? And then you can see here also keyboard strokes when you're typing it in so the user can actually hear you typing some things in here. Do you want to hide the recording window? Yeah, could be a good idea, right? So nobody can actually see that you're actually recording it, right? So you might want to hide that. This is only going to be for you, right? No one will actually see this recording window. But these task icons and the system tray icons, they can actually see those when you're recording it. This is more for your guidance, okay? But these, people will actually see those when you're recording them in your taskbar, as well as in your system tray, right? On the Mac, it's going to be over there on the top. And then move new windows inside the recording area, right? I've opened up another Photoshop file, bam, make sure it's going to come right in there. All right, smooth movements for drag and drop actions, mouse wheel actions. Yes, I want all those things. Really important to not take these for granted. What do you want? What do you not want? Video demo, right? We're not going to actually be doing any video demo in this, but just note options are relatively simple. This part's pretty important because this is going to decide how you are going to stop the recording. Which key do you want to do? Let's say you want to pause the recording. Which key do you want to do? What's the difference between pause and stopping? If you stop it, you are literally saying, hey, I'm done with this recording. Go ahead and render it. Pausing it is just saying, uh-oh, I forgot my notes or the phone's ringing, right? Postman's at the door, right? You might want to pause it, but then pick up where you left off. And then there's a few other options here too that we're not going to get into, but I don't think you really need to know these. These are going to be your most important ones right there. And then finally, we've already been in modes. You can see for default, this is going to be which kind of captions are you going to be working with. We're not going to cover this right now in a subsequent lesson altogether. We actually are going to talk about all the different caption styles and how we can customize all these. Okay, but for right now, I'm good with all my recording settings. So then I can come back, click OK, and now I'm ready to do my recording of this Photoshop. So keep an eye on what I'm about to do. I'm going to go ahead and click record. It's going to give me a little countdown. And now I'm actually hesitating. I'm not doing anything right now. I haven't clicked on anything. So Captivate has not actually captured anything. Okay, but as soon as I start clicking on things, it's going to start picking up on what I want to do. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just choose my option here. I'm going to right click here. I'm going to choose my magic wand. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure I choose the right layer. Right, and then I'm going to go ahead and just click. And I don't know if you can hear my camera sounds, but every time I click, I get a little feedback of it. Okay, but just notice I'm moving my mouse here. It's not registering any of this until I click. Now I'm going to delete that white background and that goes away, right? And then I'm going to right click, right? And I'm going to say deselect. Excellent. And I am done. Okay, so remember my keyboard shortcut was end. You might want to make yours to be something completely different. And now let's see the magic happen. It's rendering it. It's coming back into Captivate. I have 3 different new projects available to me. One is the demo, one is the assessment, and one is the training. So let's just go ahead and run through it. What is the demo going to look like? I'm just going to go ahead and just hit F10 just so we can take a look at it. Just the first 5 slides. Just watch it go. Right click. Tells me what to do. How cool. Look at the fluid mouse movements. Okay, magic wand tool. Come way over there. Very nice. Click the label. Okay, I'm not a big fan of that, but it's okay. Press the delete key. Good. Tells me what to do there. All right, and that was for my first 5 slides. All right, let's get out of this one. Let's go over here to my assessment. What's my assessment going to do? It's going to assess whether I now paid attention to what it said to do, right? So it's depending on me to then go ahead and, follow suit. Like what's supposed to happen here? Oh, I'm supposed to right click. Okay, good. So it's following me to do those things. Okay, good. And then click on that. Good, that pops up. It's waiting for me to click on this. Great, right? But watch what happens if I don't do the right thing. Oh, incorrect, right? Please try. Oh, I got to fix that. All right, what about this? Okay, good. All right, good. Now it's done it. And then you continue going from there. All right, and then the main thing here for the training is going to be, there's just going to be a hint. With this one, as I get closer to the object, it's going to tell me kind of what to do, right? There's going to be kind of a little bit of a hint. Like, where is that again? Is it up here? Like, oh, there it is. Click here. Okay, great. Oh, okay, good. Okay, it tells me, right? I might want to be a little more clear about this, where to go. Okay, but the hint is available, right? And if I click on kind of nothing, it's going to give me a little error. But as I get closer is when I'm going to get my, did I not do the right thing? I can't remember. There you go. Good. Okay. And then I go right to there. All right. Good. So, but I'm learning, right? And that's why this is important. That's what the training is all about. Let's just see if we can get a quick little lesson on working with all the different elements now, right? So let's just start with our demo. I'm going to go over here to my properties. I'm going to bring up my timeline and I'm going to see what's going on with this one here. All right. And I want you to look at the timeline here. You can see I have a mouse movement. That's awesome. Automatically done. This text caption says right click. Okay. I like that. And there's a little highlight box. Remember, we wanted it to do that. And that's going to show up there. Okay. That's great. Maybe the highlight box is a little bit too big. So maybe I want to resize that. So let's just kind of do a handful of these so you can really get the overview so you can start practicing on your own on a variety of these things here. So I'm going to go over here to my text caption, and I don't want this just to say right click. I want it to say right click on, not big enough. So not a problem. Let's make this bigger, maybe a little bit wider. Double click, magic wand tool. Great. All right, and then bam, there that is. I can move that over. Move that down this way if we want to. Oh, you know what? It's a little bit too big. I'm not a big fan of that. We know how to do that. Let's go ahead and just make this maybe 20. Okay, good. I like that a lot better. Cool, no problem. in a little bit, right? In another lesson, when we get to another video, I'm going to show you how to customize these in a really great way to make it so it's a little bit, more dynamic for you and also create styles. There that is, I was able to change it, but Captivate did a lot of work there for me to be able to capture everything and even include these captions and everything. But then I just made some little tweaks to basically say, listen, I want this to be a right click on what, right? I'm more specific to do that. Okay. I also don't want this to actually be the entire thing right here. So I can resize what that click box is going to be. And guess what else I can do? I can change the color of that click box. So what fill color do I want it to be? What does red look like? Okay, that's not bad. Green. Okay, that's not bad, right? So you really kind of want to play around with this, right? I'll do that, and then I'm going to bring up my opacity a little bit. Okay, maybe a little bit lower, maybe 50. Okay, great. I click away. Good. Now my eyes really go to this. All right, that's just one slide. Let's go ahead and do the next one. And now I'm going to do the same thing, right? So, and I'm going to say select magic wand icon. And again, of course, I can make this 20. And don't worry about it. In future lessons, we're going to learn how we can do some pretty cool stuff working with styles. So hopefully you're going to watch our subsequent lessons where we get into deep about styles. You don't have to do this over and over again. All right, but great. I can move this down, right? I can resize this. I can choose my color, right? Same deal, okay? Like that. All right, let's just maybe do maybe a handful more. And you can see this one has the mouse. Okay, let me go ahead and just zoom out a little bit. Okay, and this is now making my mouse go way over here, right? Which is great, but I have a caption that I need to adjust. Okay, but let's actually now adjust the mouse itself, because I want you to notice when I click on the mouse layer, I now have properties for that mouse. All right, so what I'd like to do is choose what type of mouse I want. You see that? Lots and lots of options there. And I also want to double the mouse size. Yes, that makes it so much easier for people to see. Why not? And do you want to do a little mouse click sound? Sure, why not, right? So you have all these really amazing options to work with here. Why not do it? Okay, so I'll just go ahead and just say select layer you want to edit. All right, obviously not showing up, so not a difficult task. And let's change that to 20. Let's bring this in right there. Okay, and then just a little hint for you. Notice how my little tail is not coming to the right place. So what I can do is I can come over to here, and you'll notice here is a different call outs. Okay, so I'm gonna actually make my call out come over to here in the upper right, and you can see, okay, that's better. Now people can actually see it. Okay, we've done quite a bit here, right? So let's now preview this to see all the magic that we've done, right? But also more importantly, what is the magic that Captivate has done for us? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just watch these next slides, F10, and let's just see what it's done for me. Right click on Magic Wand tool. Nice, cool, does that. Oh, select Magic, okay, nice. Okay, select the layer one, okay. Good, close enough, but yeah, okay. So I got more work to do, right? But let me just come back over to here just real quick. I'm gonna zoom in on this one because I also noticed that this little highlight box, not a big fan of that. So you'll have to kind of just maybe sometimes do a little bit of QA on Captivate's work, right? It does a pretty valiant effort, so we gotta give it a little bit of props, but you can see sometimes you just gotta go and spot check these things, right? So not bad, right? So pretty extraordinary, all the cool stuff you want to do. And then of course I would just change the name of this, right? I'm just going to call this Magic Wand Tool Demo. And now that's going to be my demo. All right, so your task is going to be recording whatever you want on your screen and then going ahead and doing a demo, doing an assessment, doing training, and then coming in for each of these individual elements that pop up, all the different captions, all the different mouse movements and everything, and really customize them to do what you want to do, right? Pretty awesome. Have fun, and we'll see you in the next lesson. And welcome back, everybody. We are now in the final stages of this lesson, and not only this lesson, but creating this particular course. So what we'd like to do is finally just publish it, okay? Now, some of you may be publishing in a variety of different formats. You might be putting it into your learning management system or your LMS. You might just be publishing this as a video. You might be just publishing this on your web server. What I'm going to recommend, you all publish this as an HTML5 file and not as a Swift file or a Flash file. So I'm just going to put that as a little bit of a kind of pre-hint for what we're going to talk about in a little bit. What we're going to talk about in another future lesson is working with our different players and everything. So just again, a little hint, and stay tuned for our next segment. So let's go ahead and now go to File and come down here to our Publish settings first of all. And we come to there and we're going to see that we're going to have a number of different options for me to, how do I want to publish this, right? As you can see here, my general settings, right? So what do you want to do? Where do you want to publish this? I'm going to go ahead and just say that, and I'm going to publish this inside of my file here. Let's just go to Captivate, select folder. That's great. So you'll see it pops up directly, automatically to my publish settings. Okay, so just in case you're not clear on where this is within these categories, you can click on this little triangle and you can see we automatically get to publish settings right here. So some of this may change for you by your frames per second, right? If it's coming in, a little bit sort of jumpy, maybe you want to increase the frames per second, knowing that it's going to be a larger file size. A few other things here is, do you want to include the mouse? Maybe some of you is like, listen, I recorded my mouse, but I don't want it to be shown there, right? It's just kind of getting in the way. It's distracting. I needed it for my recording, but I just don't want it to be there. It'll just deactivate it and then make it invisible. Accessibility, we're going to talk about in future lessons or future courses entirely, right? But that's definitely an important thing to be concerned about. Restrict keyboard tabbing to slide items only. Okay, so that is also another type of accessibility option. You don't necessarily need to worry about that here. Okay, hide selection rectangle for slide items in HTML5. You'll know when that's the case as this comes up. Do you want to work with audio? Do you want to publish audio as mono, right? So if your audio is not coming in that great, you probably want to uncheck this, because the opposite of mono is going to be stereo, which is going to give you kind of more tracks and a richer sound. Play tap audio for recording typing, like tap, tap, tap as you're typing. Do you want that there? Now that you're finally in your publish settings and you did your screen recording and your software simulation, maybe you realize, you know what, that's a little bit much. I don't want that. And then you have also the option for disallow phone landscape orientation, right? Maybe you don't want it to kind of like flip around. It's just messing things up. You realize when you're doing your responsive design, it actually changes the whole kind of look and feel of things. So you want to actually disallow that. So pretty cool, easy to work with there. Now, you also may want to put in what's called a preloader, right? You'll know when that's the case, right? Especially for slower types of connections. It's going to just kind of give you a little animation that's going to preload it to show like loading, loading, loading. If you want to do that, right, you can see, and you would just maybe change that to like 25%, and then bam, it's going to load up. So you're kind of stalling for time, more or less, when you're doing a preloader, so the entire file can come up. Because if your file is very, very big, it could take a long time. So you might want to kind of at least kind of occupy people to just reassure them that like, hey, something is happening, don't worry about it, and you bring in a preloader. So you'll have to get that from another file to kind of bring in that GIF or whatever it's going to be able to say that's coming up, and then right when it meets that 25%, it's then going to start showing the file as it loads up in the background. Do you want to password protect it? Totally up to you. Put in your password if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and just like click OK at this point. That's good. And then I'm going to publish it. So I'm going to go over here to File and Publish. Also notice it's Shift F12, or guess what? Here's the option Publish here as well. Okay, I'm just going to choose now Publish for devices. Some of these options you might be working with other different third parties, including Adobe Captivate Prime, right? I'm just going to go ahead and say Publish for devices. And now this is going to come up here. Publish as HTML5. Notice the Swift file option does not even appear. Why? Because this is responsive. If you were working with a non-responsive file, which we've been working with in this class, you're going to see the options for HTML5 and what's known as an SWF. So I'll show you that in just a second. All right, so where do you want to save this to? Yep, that looks good to me. All right, and then also, do you want to create zip files as a result of that? I'm going to say yes, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. And then how many slides am I going to have there? Okay, that's great. Audio settings, that's great. Okay, good. So do I want all these things? Sure, why not? Okay, so then we're pretty much good to go. I'm going to hit publish, and we're going to wait for it to do its thing. Doesn't take that long, all things considered. Creating the zip folder for you. Okay, and now publishing is complete. Okay, so now if I go to that file, you will see now I have my zip folder right here. Okay, and I also have my Captivate file, everything. Okay, now if I go ahead and open this up, you will see that there's quite a bit going on here, right? Here is my index.html. If I were to double click on this now, it's actually going to show the file, right? But look how tiny it is, because guess what? All the things that live inside of this are all here, like all my assets, right? All my images, everything else here. If I have all my play bar, all that good stuff is all right there available to me. Okay, so let's go over here to my images, right? You can see all kinds of good stuff is all kind of living there. We don't have to worry about that because Captivate does all the heavy lifting for me. All right, so let's just go ahead. And in order for me to actually view this, I'll need to extract it because it's actually zipped out. So let me just go ahead and extract this right now so we can actually see it, what it's going to look like in the browser. And now I'll actually have two different versions. And here we go. There's my course, there's my begin, and looks wonderful. Close that out and come back to here. And there's my zip folder again. Now, why do we do a zip folder? Some of you may be working with different learning management systems that require that you have something as a zip folder in order to upload it to the actual learning management system. Okay, so totally up to you. Now, some of you may be faced with something called SCORM requirements, SCORM, right? Especially if you're going to be quizzing and tracking people. We're going to talk about all that stuff in subsequent lessons in another course where we're going to talk about quizzing. We're going to talk about how we can actually customize what it's going to look like. And let me just go ahead and just show you here as far as our players and all that good stuff here so we can actually customize it. But for right now, publishing might be exactly what you want, and then bam, this is perfect and you're good to go. Okay, but notice what my player looks like right now. All right, we're gonna learn how to customize all that stuff in future lessons, a lot of exciting stuff around the corner, but for some of you, this may be exactly what you want. Let's just back up to where we can then also look at what it's going to look like if something is not a responsive document. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up to another one. And let me just go over here to my demo options right here. This is not responsive. So let's just take a look what these options are going to look like when I publish. Notice I now have this option for HTML5 or SWF, and I also have the option to make this into a video if I want to. You can just export this as a video, right? And what types of quality do you want it to be? And maybe you want to do it as an exe file, right? Totally up to you if you're on a Mac. So very seldom will you be doing that, but you'll know when the time comes to do that. I want you to notice here HTML5 and SWF. Currently, okay, the options are the same, right? Project title, right? Here's my location where it's going to be. Here's my option for making it to a zip file, okay? But then I have these options here, right? My SWF and HTML. Right now, HTML5 is selected. So when I publish it, it's going to pretty much do more or less the same thing. When I choose SWF, I want you to notice a whole bunch of options now appear here. It's going to export a Flash file, right? Which no programs out there will be able to really run. But if you did just want to have a PDF, you could choose SWF and then you will actually get the PDF version of this as well. And maybe that's the way you want to show it to people who don't, have ability to watch it any other way, right? So when you hit publish, in this case, you're actually going to get all of this, right? The SWF file, a PDF, and the HTML5, and it's all going to be ready to go. And if you click on more, you'll see you have other options that we saw earlier in terms of mobile gestures, right? Especially for the HTML5, or I should say exclusively for, tapping on it, things like that instead of clicking on it and a few other options here as well, which we'll get to in future lessons. Let's do that now. I'm going to go ahead and hit publish, and then in a minute, it's going to finish publishing it, and then we're going to go into our folder and file location, and you're going to see we're going to have a number of wonderful things there. Okay, so to view the generated PDF file, you must have Adobe Reader. That's fine. And then it tells me it's been published successfully. And then bam, there it is. Magic Wand Demo. Told it to put it into a zip folder. There it is. And then bam, you can see there's my PDF. There's my index.html. And there's a whole bunch of other things here as well. And then guess what? There's that pesky old Swift file that will not go away. But the option is there if you want it. Pretty good, pretty easy. Again, Captivate does a lot of heavy lifting for you. You don't have to worry about that too much. And then you're done, right? You are ready to publish. Okay, so go ahead and practice that. Hopefully you've got lots of stuff to work with. And we will see you in the next set of lessons. This is going to be the first of a few. Thank you and good luck. And congratulations on completing the first part of our video tutorials on Adobe Captivate. We covered a lot of very important topics in this course. Our objectives were to get you more comfortable with e-learning as a whole, and just as importantly, to learn the many amazing features within Captivate. Let's go ahead and review what some of those topics were that you learned. We started off with an introduction to the most effective ways to prepare for creating your e-learning courses. We then explored the Captivate interface and all of its panels and learned how to navigate throughout the program. We quickly got into creating new modules, including how to create responsive modules from mobile devices. We then did a nice deep dive into working with themes, designs, and layout slides. Following that, we introduce you to master slides and all of its critical elements around using master slides. We also covered working effectively and creatively with images, including some of the built-in assets that Captivate provides. We worked with text and typographical formats and overall slide layout structuring. And to make your courses more interactive, we learned how to create buttons, actions, and hyperlinks. And finally, you learned how to save and publish your training modules in a variety of different formats. Now, keep in mind, this is just the beginning. Stay tuned. This is just the first part of a series of Captivate training videos. A lot more to come. Thanks for watching and happy creating.